It is 3 in the morning. The world outside is still, wrapped in a deep and profound silence. Yet, inside your mind, a storm is raging. There is no external alarm, no sudden noise that has pulled you from your sleep, only the familiar, quiet hum of anxiety. In the stillness of the room, your thoughts are deafening, a relentless cascade of unresolved worries from yesterday and the endless to-do lists for tomorrow. You replay conversations, dissect decisions, and wrestle with a vague, nameless unease that settles deep within your chest. This experience, this quiet desperation in the pre-dawn hours, is not a unique affliction. It is a symptom of our time, a collective fever of the soul. We live in a world that worships speed, a culture that mistakes busyness for meaning, and a society that promises happiness at the end of the next purchase, the next promotion, the next achievement. We are constantly connected, yet feel profoundly disconnected. We are surrounded by noise, both outside in our cities and inside our own minds, a persistent static that drowns out the gentle whisper of our own intuition. We have mastered the art of doing, but we have forgotten the simple, sacred art of being. We have forgotten how to truly rest. But what if there was another way? What if the peace we so desperately seek is not something to be found out there, in some future circumstance, but is instead an inherent quality of our own minds, buried beneath the rubble of stress and distraction? There exists an ancient path, a timeless science of the mind that has spent thousands of years exploring the nature of suffering and the possibility of profound inner peace. This path does not ask for blind faith, nor does it demand you become someone different. Instead, it offers a set of practical tools, a clear and compassionate mirror to help you understand the workings of your own consciousness. It is an invitation not to a new religion, but to a deeper relationship with yourself, a journey to uncover the calm, clear-knowing awareness that has been patiently waiting for you all along. This is an invitation to come home. We begin by acknowledging the race. It is the defining rhythm of our lives, a frantic, unspoken cadence that propels us forward from the moment we wake. Be more, do more, have more. This is the silent mantra of the modern age, a relentless pressure to climb, to achieve, to produce, to optimize. We are runners in an endless marathon with no marked finish line, and the only rule is to never stop. We have come to glorify this state of perpetual motion, wearing our exhaustion as a badge of honor, a testament to our relevance and worth. We equate a full calendar with a full life, and we have forgotten the crucial distinction between being busy and being truly alive. Busyness is often a state of distraction, a frantic response to external demands and internal anxieties. It is loud, scattered, and chaotic. Purpose, on the other hand, is quiet. It is centered, intentional, and arises from a deep internal alignment with our own values. It does not need to rush because it knows its direction. Yet, we are conditioned to choose the noise of busyness over the quiet of purpose. We are taught to hack our lives, to view our bodies as machines that need optimizing, and our time as a resource to be squeezed for maximum productivity. We track our steps, our sleep cycles, our screen time, our calories, turning the sacred act of living into a series of data points to be analyzed and improved. This relentless drive for self-optimization creates a subtle but pervasive sense of inadequacy. We are always falling short, always one life hack away from the promised state of perfect efficiency and happiness. We are so busy trying to build a better future that we are never fully present in the only moment we truly have, which is now. This endless race is fueled by a powerful and seductive promise, the promise of materialism. We are told, in a million different ways, that fulfillment can be purchased. The emptiness you feel, the quiet ache of dissatisfaction, can be soothed by the next acquisition. The new car will bring you freedom. The larger house will bring you security. The latest phone will bring you connection. This is the great illusion of our time. It is like the story of a man who was given the task of filling a large, beautiful well. He was told that once the well was full, he would find ultimate contentment. So he began to work, tirelessly, from dawn until dusk. He would find small, smooth pebbles and drop them into the well, one by one. Each time a pebble made a soft splash, he felt a momentary flicker of satisfaction, a sense of progress. He became obsessed with the gathering of pebbles, finding ever more, ever shinier ones. His days were consumed by the search, the carrying, and the dropping. He never stopped to look into the well, to gauge its depth, or to question the nature of his task. If he had, he would have seen that the well was bottomless. There was no amount of pebbles that could ever fill it. His entire life was being spent on the frantic activity of gathering, mistaking the motion for meaning. We are that man, and the pebbles are the endless objects of our desire. We chase the fleeting satisfaction of the splash, the brief thrill of the new, believing that this time, this purchase, this achievement will be the one that finally fills the void. But the void is not a lack of things. It is a lack of connection with our own inner being. And so, the cycle continues. The brief happiness fades, the emptiness returns, and the search for the next pebble begins anew, with even greater urgency. This frantic search is amplified by a uniquely modern phenomenon, the digital window into a million other lives. Through the curated reality of social media, we are constantly exposed to the highlight reels of others. We scroll through a seamless feed of perfect vacations, happy families, career successes, and flawless bodies. We are comparing our own raw, unfiltered, behind-the-scenes experience of life, with all its messiness and uncertainty, to a polished and edited public performance. This creates a fertile ground for the fear of missing out, or FOMO, a persistent, low-grade anxiety that somewhere, someone else is living a better, more exciting, more meaningful life than we are. Our own quiet afternoon on the porch feels inadequate when compared to a friend's exotic beach adventure. Our simple, home-cooked meal pales in comparison to the artfully photographed dish at a trendy restaurant. This constant comparison is a form of self-inflicted violence. It erodes our ability to find joy and contentment in the simple reality of our own lives. It tethers our sense of self-worth to external validation, to the number of likes and comments we receive, making our inner peace as fragile and fleeting as a passing internet trend. We begin to live for the approval of an unseen audience, performing our lives rather than living them, choosing the experience that will look best on camera rather than the one that will most nourish our soul. We become strangers to our own authentic desires, our inner compass spinning wildly, pulled in 1,000 different directions by the perceived happiness of others. The ultimate consequence of this endless race, fueled by materialism and amplified by comparison, is a profound and painful disconnection. First, we become disconnected from ourselves. In the rush to be everything to everyone, to meet every demand and chase every desire, we lose touch with our own inner world. The voice of our intuition becomes a faint whisper, easily drowned out by the clamor of our obligations and ambitions. We don't know how to be alone and in silence. The stillness feels uncomfortable, empty, because we are so accustomed to the constant stimulation, the next task, the next notification. We have forgotten how to simply sit and be with ourselves, to listen to the rhythms of our own heart and mind without judgment. Second, we become disconnected from others. Our relationships become transactional. We network instead of connect. We listen in order to reply, not to understand. Even when we are in the same room with people we love, our minds are often elsewhere, still running on the treadmill, planning, worrying, and strategizing. True intimacy requires presence, a quality of focused, open-hearted attention that is the first casualty of a hurried life. We have more ways to communicate than ever before in human history, yet we often feel more lonely and isolated. Finally, we become disconnected from nature. We live our lives in climate-controlled boxes, moving from home to car to office, sealed off from the elements. We lose touch with the natural rhythms of the world, the slow, patient wisdom of a tree, the vastness of the night sky, the feeling of the earth beneath our feet. We forget that we are not separate from nature, but a part of it. This disconnection robs us of a crucial source of grounding, perspective, and peace. It is like a tree trying to grow without roots, unstable and easily toppled by the slightest wind. This, then, is the diagnosis. We are a people running a race we did not consciously choose, towards a finish line that does not exist. We are chasing a happiness that is always outside of us, leaving us feeling empty, anxious, and profoundly alone. The strategy of running faster, of acquiring more, of optimizing harder, has failed. Perhaps the problem is not that we are not running fast enough. Perhaps the problem is that we are on the wrong path entirely. To find a new way forward, we must first have the courage to stop, to be still, and to look honestly at the landscape of our own inner experience. We must begin by directly examining this universal feeling of dissatisfaction, this bottomless well of want that no amount of pebbles can ever seem to fill. Phật, US, Zem Tùy Chỉnh, Hiện Tiến Trình Tư Duy. To move forward on a new path, we must first be willing to look unflinchingly at the ground beneath our feet. In the previous chapter, we diagnosed the symptoms of our modern condition, the endless race that leaves us feeling exhausted and disconnected. Now, we must go deeper, beyond the symptoms, to the fundamental diagnosis offered by the Buddhist tradition. This diagnosis is encapsulated in a single, profoundly important word, dukkha. This Pali word is often translated as suffering, and this translation carries a weight that can feel heavy, even pessimistic. We might imagine that to focus on suffering is to be morbid, to dwell on the negative aspects of life. But this is a misunderstanding. To understand dukkha is not an act of pessimism, but an act of profound compassion and radical honesty. It is the diagnosis of a master physician who, before offering a cure, must first name the illness with clarity and precision. The Buddha's first great teaching, the first noble truth, is simply this: there is dukkha. It is not a condemnation, but a gentle, universal acknowledgement. It is the statement that the feeling of unease you carry, the anxiety that wakes you at 3 in the morning, the sense that something is not quite right, is not a personal failure. It is a fundamental part of the unawakened human experience. Dukkha is not just the overt pain of tragedy, like sickness, old age, and death. It is also a much more subtle, pervasive quality of experience. It is the inherent friction of existence, the sense of unsatisfactoriness that hums quietly in the background of our lives, even when things are going well. It is the feeling of a wheel that is slightly off-center, producing a constant, subtle vibration with every turn. To truly grasp this, we can explore dukkha in its 3 distinct forms. The first form is the most obvious, the one we all recognize instantly. It is called dukkha dukkha, which can be translated as the pain of pain. This is the raw, unmistakable suffering of body and mind. It is the throbbing of a migraine, the sharp pain of a broken bone, the chronic ache of a diseased body. It is also the mental and emotional anguish we experience, the sting of a harsh criticism, the grief that comes with losing a loved one, the fear that grips us when we face uncertainty, the despair of failure, the bitterness of betrayal. This is the pain of encountering the unpleasant, the unwanted, the difficult. It is the pain of life not conforming to our wishes. No amount of positive thinking can wish away this aspect of existence. As long as we have a body and a mind, we are vulnerable to sickness, injury, loss, and disappointment. This is the baseline reality of our mortal condition, and to deny it is to live in a state of fantasy. This is the territory of the first arrow. The second form of dukkha is more subtle and in many ways more profound. It is called viparinama dukkha, the pain of change. This is the suffering that arises from the impermanence of pleasant things. It is the anxiety hidden within happiness. Think of a perfect, golden afternoon in late summer. The air is warm, the light is beautiful, and you are surrounded by people you love. It is a moment of pure joy. Yet, even in the midst of this joy, there can be a subtle, poignant ache, a quiet knowledge that this moment cannot last. The sun will set, the season will turn, people will change, and this perfect alignment of conditions will pass. The happiness itself is not the problem. The dukkha arises from our clinging to it, our desperate attempt to freeze the moment, to make the pleasant permanent in a world that is defined by flux. It is the pain of the party ending, the vacation being over, the delicious meal being finished. It is the suffering of youth fading into middle age, of a vibrant relationship settling into a quiet routine. We grasp and we cling to the good, and because everything changes, our grasping inevitably leads to disappointment. We are trying to build a solid house on the surface of a flowing river. The pleasure itself is real, but because it is transient, our attachment to it becomes a source of suffering. This form of dukkha reveals a crucial insight. Even our happiness, when it is dependent on external, changing conditions, has the seed of suffering embedded within it. The third, and most subtle form, is sankhara dukkha, the pain of conditioned existence. This is the deepest layer of unsatisfactoriness, the background hum of the off-center wheel. It is a fundamental unease that arises simply from the nature of who and what we are as human beings. It comes from the fact that our sense of self is not a solid, independent entity, but a fragile composite, a temporary gathering of physical and mental components that are constantly changing and entirely dependent on other conditions. Our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our perceptions, our beliefs, they are all in a state of constant flux. There is no solid core, no permanent me to be found. This inherent instability, this lack of a fixed ground to stand on, creates a deep, often unconscious, background anxiety. It is the reason why, even when there is no overt pain and no immediate loss of pleasure, we can still feel a sense of restlessness, a vague feeling of being incomplete. It is the suffering of being a vulnerable, mortal creature in an unpredictable universe. This is the dukkha that is present in every moment of conditioned existence, whether we are aware of it or not. It is the fundamental tension of being a self that craves permanence and security in a world that offers neither. To illustrate how we compound this inherent suffering, the Buddha offered the parable of the two arrows. Imagine a person is walking through a forest and is struck by an arrow. This causes immediate, real pain. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of life. We have discussed sickness, loss, accidents, the dukkha and viparinama dukkha that are simply part of the fabric of existence. These events happen to everyone, but then the person reacts to being shot. They cry out, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. My journey is ruined. I will never recover from this." In their anger, fear, and self-pity, they effectively pick up another arrow and shoot it into themselves, right next to the first one. This is the second arrow. This second arrow is our mental reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the resistance, the judgment, the resentment, the fear. The pain of the first arrow is unavoidable, but the pain of the second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. The vast majority of our mental and emotional anguish comes not from the events of our lives, but from the second arrow of our own reaction. We get stuck in traffic. That's the first arrow. We spend the next hour fuming, shouting, and ruining our day with anger. That's the second arrow. Someone criticizes us. That's the first arrow. We spend the next week replaying their words, questioning our self-worth, and feeling resentful. That's the second arrow. The entire spiritual path can be seen as the practice of learning not to shoot the second arrow. It is about learning to be with the unavoidable pain of the first arrow with acceptance, wisdom, and compassion, so that we do not add a second, and often more painful, layer of suffering on top of it. This first noble truth, this compassionate diagnosis of dukkha, is not a message of despair. It is a message of profound hope and empowerment. By having the courage to look directly at the nature of our dissatisfaction, we stop fighting a battle we can never win. We stop pretending that life should be a state of constant, uninterrupted pleasure. We stop blaming ourselves for feeling anxious or incomplete. It is like turning on the light in a dark room. For the first time, we can clearly see the layout of the room and the obstacles we keep tripping over. Naming the illness is the first, essential step toward finding a cure. It validates our deepest experiences and assures us that we are not alone in them. It tells us that this feeling of being off-center is not a sign that we are broken, but a sign that we are human. And once we have accepted this diagnosis, once we have acknowledged the presence of the wobble, we can then begin to ask the most important question of all. What is its cause? If dukkha is the universal illness, what is the virus that creates it? This inquiry leads us directly to the second noble truth, the origin of our discontent. Having seen the illness with clarity, the physician does not despair. Instead, they proceed to the next logical step, identifying the cause. This is a moment of empowerment, for an illness with a known cause is one that can be treated. In the Buddhist understanding, after the honest diagnosis of dukkha, the first noble truth, comes the profound insight of the second noble truth, samudaya, which reveals the origin of this deep and pervasive unsatisfactoriness. The origin, the Buddha taught, is an internal force, a relentless, driving energy called tanha. This Pali word is most often translated as craving or desire, but its meaning is closer to thirst. It is not a gentle wishing, but a deep, burning, primal thirst for something to quench a fundamental sense of lack. This thirst is the engine of our restlessness. It is the force that keeps the off-center wheel of dukkha spinning, moment after moment, day after day. It is the unseen director behind the endless race, constantly whispering in our ear that happiness is somewhere else, that we are not yet complete, that we need something more than what this present moment holds. To understand this engine, we must look at its three primary cylinders, the three distinct ways this thirst manifests in our lives. The first form is the most familiar, the thirst for sense pleasures, known as kama tanha. This is the constant pull towards that which delights our six senses. It is the craving for the taste of sweet food, the desire to hear a beautiful piece of music, the longing for the scent of rain on dry earth, the urge for a comforting physical touch. It is the magnetic pull of a visually pleasing form, whether in a person, a piece of art, or a product displayed in a store window. This thirst also extends to the mind, our sixth sense organ, craving pleasant thoughts, fantasies, and daydreams. We seek to be entertained, to be distracted, to feel good. In itself, enjoying a pleasant experience is not the problem. Life is filled with beauty and simple joys that are meant to be appreciated. The issue lies in the quality of thirst, the desperate needing of these experiences to feel whole. It is the belief that our happiness is contingent upon getting the next sensory hit. This turns us into restless ghosts, constantly chasing after fleeting pleasures. The satisfaction from one experience barely has time to register before the thirst for the next one arises. This creates a state of perpetual dependency, where our inner peace is held hostage by the ever-changing and unreliable world of sensory input. We are never truly at rest, because we are always on the hunt for the next pleasant thing. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhava tanha, the thirst to be, to become, to exist. This is the craving that is intimately tied to our ego, our sense of self. It is the powerful, deep-seated drive to establish and solidify our identity in the world. It's the desire to be someone of importance, a successful leader, a respected artist, a perfect parent, a recognized intellectual, even a spiritually advanced person. This thirst fuels our ambition. It pushes us to accumulate wealth, status, titles, and followers, not just for the sensory pleasures they bring, but for the way they seem to affirm our existence and give it weight and meaning. It is the thirst to leave a mark, to build a legacy, to carve our name into the stone of history so that we do not simply vanish. At its core, bhava tanha is the ego's desperate attempt to achieve permanence in an impermanent world. It is the belief that if we can just become this idealized version of ourselves, if we can just reach that next level of success or recognition, the underlying anxiety of our fragile existence will finally be vanquished. It is the engine of the endless race, the drive that tells us to keep climbing, because the view from the next peak will surely be the one that gives us lasting peace. It is a thirst to add layers to ourselves, believing that more is better, stronger, and safer. The third form is the shadow of the second. It is vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence, the craving to get rid of something. This is the energy of aversion, of pushing away, while the thirst for pleasure pulls us toward things, and the thirst to become inflates our sense of self. This thirst seeks to annihilate that which is unpleasant. It is the intense desire for a painful feeling to stop, for an anxious thought to disappear, for an annoying person to go away, or for an uncomfortable situation to end. This aversion can manifest as anger, irritation, hatred, jealousy, and fear. It's a violent rejection of the present moment. When the moment contains something we don't like, we declare war on our own experience, believing that our peace depends on eliminating the offending element. This is not the opposite of craving. It is simply craving's other face. Both arise from the same root, a fundamental inability to accept reality as it is. One says, "I must have that to be happy," while the other says, "I must get rid of that to be happy." Both are forms of struggle, of resistance. In its most extreme form, this thirst for annihilation can turn inward, manifesting as self-hatred or even a desire for self-destruction, a desperate wish for the entire painful experience of being a self to simply cease. There is a classic story that perfectly illustrates how this thirst traps us. In some parts of the world, hunters have a clever way of catching monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd and drill a hole in it that is just big enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. They then place some sweet rice or nuts inside and secure the coconut to the ground. A monkey, drawn by the smell, will come along, slip its hand through the narrow opening, and grasp a fistful of the delicious prize. But now, with its hand clenched into a fist, it cannot pull it back out. The hole is too small for the fist. The hunters, who have been watching from a distance, begin to approach. The monkey sees them and screeches in terror. It pulls and tugs with all its might, but it is trapped. It could be free in an instant. All it needs to do is open its hand, release the rice, and slip its hand out. But its craving, its attachment to the prize, is so absolute that it cannot let go. The idea of losing the rice is more powerful than the fear of losing its life. And so, because it will not unclench its fist, it is captured. We are that monkey. The coconut is any situation in life. The rice is anything we cling to, a pleasure, an idea, an identity, a resentment, a hope. Our suffering, our feeling of being trapped, does not come from the situation itself, but from our own fist, our own refusal to let go. This persistent, habitual grasping is called upadana, or clinging. It is what happens when the initial thirst of tanha solidifies into a way of being. Freedom is always available in the simple, yet profound act of opening the hand. This mechanism of thirst and clinging creates a self-perpetuating cycle, a feedback loop that keeps us trapped on the wheel of dissatisfaction. It begins with the thirst, the craving for something to be different. We act on that craving, grasping for the pleasant or pushing away the unpleasant. This action leads to a fleeting, temporary result, a moment of pleasure, a brief respite from pain. But because all things are impermanent, this result inevitably fades. The pleasure subsides, the pain returns, or a new, more subtle dissatisfaction of boredom and emptiness sets in. This feeling of lack then triggers a new thirst, a new craving for another fix, another distraction, and so the wheel turns, again and again. This is the very nature of samsara, not as some distant cosmological cycle, but as a moment-to-moment psychological reality. We are perpetually chasing a horizon that recedes as we approach it, fueled by a thirst that can never be truly quenched by anything external. The profound insight of the second noble truth is that the cause of our suffering is not out there in the world. It is not our boss, our partner, our financial situation, or our past. The cause is in here. It is this internal engine of thirsting and grasping. And this is the best news we could ever receive. Because if the cause were external, we would be helpless, forever at the mercy of a world we cannot control. But because the cause is internal, because it lies within our own minds, we have the power to change it. We have the power to understand this thirst, to see its workings clearly, and to gradually, gently, learn to let it go. But to do that, we must ask another, even deeper question. When we speak of this I that thirsts, this me that clings, who or what are we actually talking about? To find the root of the problem, we must now turn our investigation toward the clinger itself, the phantom at the center of the storm, our very sense of self. We have traced our inner unrest to its source, the burning thirst of tanha, the relentless craving and clinging that keeps us running on the wheel of dissatisfaction. But this discovery inevitably leads to a more personal and penetrating question. When we say I crave or I am clinging, who exactly is this I? At the center of our entire experience, there seems to sit a solid, continuous self, an entity that we call me. This self feels like the chief executive of our life, the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, and the hero of our personal story. It feels permanent, essential, and incredibly real. The entire purpose of the endless race, the accumulation of wealth, status, and experiences, seems to be for the benefit and protection of this central self. The spiritual journey requires us to turn the light of inquiry upon this very character. We must have the courage to investigate the nature of this I, not as an act of aggression, but as an act of gentle and liberating curiosity. We must examine the ghost in the machine. From the Buddhist perspective, this entity we call the ego or the self is not a solid, independent thing. It is a process, not a substance. It is a verb, not a noun. The ego is a brilliant, intricate, and ongoing activity of the mind that bundles together a collection of changing elements and stamps them with the label me. This construction project happens in several ways. First, we identify with our bodies. We look in the mirror and think, that's me. When the body feels pleasure, I am happy. When the body feels pain, I am sick. We fuse our entire identity with this collection of flesh, blood, and bone, forgetting that the body is an ever-changing natural process, subject to birth, growth, decay, and death, just like a plant or a star. Second, and even more powerfully, we identify with our minds. We mistake ourselves for the constant stream of thoughts, feelings, memories, and beliefs that flow through our consciousness. We build our identity out of stories. I am the kind of person who is good at math. I am not a creative person. I had a difficult childhood. I am a victim, or I am a survivor. The ego is the masterful storyteller, the internal narrator that weaves all these disparate, fleeting mental events into a seemingly coherent and continuous narrative. This story provides us with a sense of identity and predictability, but it is a fiction. You are not your thoughts, any more than the sky is the clouds that drift across it. You are the awareness in which the thoughts appear. The ego is like a corporation. We see a single name, like General Motors, and think of it as a solid entity. But in reality, it is a complex, ever-changing system of people, buildings, ideas, and activities. There is no single General Motors thing you can point to. In the same way, there is no solid me you can find. There is only the ongoing process of identifying, narrating, and constructing. This constructed self, being a phantom, is inherently insecure. Its entire existence is a precarious balancing act, and so its primary agenda is self-preservation. This agenda has two main strategies. The first is to seek validation and confirmation, to prove to itself and the world that it is real, substantial, and important. This is the root of the thirst to become bhavatana. The ego seeks to solidify itself by accumulating things to label as mine. My house, my car, my job, my reputation. It identifies with accomplishments, beliefs, and groups. I am a successful lawyer. I am a Democrat. I am a fan of this team. Each label adds another layer of paint to the phantom, making it feel more solid. It craves praise and recoils from criticism because praise is a confirmation of its story, while criticism is a threat to its very existence. It is constantly comparing, competing, and seeking to be superior, because to be average or to be wrong is, for the ego, a kind of death. The ego's second strategy is the flip side of the first. It fears its own annihilation above all else. This is the root of the thirst to get rid of, vibhava tanha. Because it is a construct, the ego lives in constant, low-grade fear of being exposed, of dissolving, of dying. This fear drives it to create rigid boundaries and to defend them fiercely. This is the origin of the Great Divide, the fundamental schism in our experience. Me versus the rest of the universe. My survival, my needs, my happiness are paramount, and everything and everyone else is either a tool to be used, a threat to be eliminated, or an irrelevance to be ignored. This defensive crouch is the source of our judgment of others, our tribalism, our greed, our anger, and our fear. Anything that challenges the ego's story, a different point of view, a person who doesn't like us, a failure at work is perceived as a mortal threat and must be pushed away. This brings us to a powerful parable. Imagine a great and famous general, a man known for his strength and courage on the battlefield. Yet, in his private life, he is consumed by fear. He is terrified of assassins, of rivals, of a sudden attack in the night. To protect himself, he decides he will never remove his suit of heavy iron armor. He wears it to council meetings, he wears it to dinner, and he even wears it to bed. At first, the crushing weight feels like security. He feels invincible, sealed off from all potential harm. But as the weeks turn into months, the armor becomes his prison. He cannot move freely. He cannot feel the warmth of the sun or the gentle touch of a breeze on his skin. He cannot embrace a loved one. His breathing becomes shallow under the constant compression. His muscles ache and his spirit grows weary. He lives in a dark, clanking, isolated world of his own making. In the end, he is not slain by an assassin's dagger. He dies from sheer exhaustion, suffocated by the very defenses he built to keep himself safe. That armor is the ego. It is the rigid personality, the collection of beliefs, defenses, and stories that we construct to protect our fragile sense of self from the perceived dangers of the world. It promises security, but it delivers imprisonment. It cuts us off from the spontaneity, the vulnerability, and the authentic connection that make life rich and meaningful. The tragedy is that most of our suffering comes not from the world's attacks, but from the crushing weight and isolation of our own armor. The spiritual path, then, is not about waging a violent war to kill the ego. Such an attack would just be another aggressive strategy of the ego itself, a kind of spiritual ambition. The path is far more subtle and gentle. It is a path of wisdom, not of violence. The invitation is simply to begin observing the general in his armor. Through the practice of mindfulness, we can start to watch the ego's activities without judgment. We can notice the way it tightens in the body when we feel criticized. We can see the way it puffs up with pride when praised. We can hear the constant, chattering stories it tells about ourselves and others. We begin to see its patterns, its fears, its predictable strategies. In this seeing, a space begins to open up. We start to realize that while the armor is there, it is not who we are. We are the silent, spacious awareness that is witnessing the armor. The thought arises, I am not good enough, and instead of immediately believing it, we can learn to say, there is the thought that I am not good enough. The storyteller is at it again. This shift from identification to observation is the beginning of liberation. We don't have to shatter the armor. We simply learn, gently and patiently, how to unbuckle it, how to set it aside, and how to risk the profound freedom of feeling the sun on our skin. again. The true happiness we seek is not found in polishing our armor to a brilliant shine, but in having the courage to take it off. This investigation reveals that the solid, separate self we thought we were is in fact a conditioned, impermanent, and often fearful process. It is a ghost in the machine. And this raises a critical question. What is the ego so afraid of? What truth about the nature of reality is so terrifying that the ego must spend all its energy constructing this heavy armor to deny it? The most fundamental truth it denies is that everything, including the ego itself, is in a constant state of flux. To truly understand the source of our suffering, we must now turn our gaze to this universal law that the ego cannot abide, the law of impermanence. We have seen the ego for what it is, a suit of armor, a defensive fortress built to protect a fragile sense of self. We must now ask the question, what is this fortress defending against? What truth is so profound, so challenging to the ego's claim of sovereignty that it must spend a lifetime constructing walls to deny it? The answer is simple, yet it is the single most fundamental law of the universe. It is the truth of change. Everything, without exception, is in a state of constant flux. In the language of the Buddha, this is called anicca, or impermanence. To understand anicca is not to learn a depressing philosophy, but to open our eyes to the very rhythm of reality, the cosmic dance of arising and passing away that is happening within us and around us at every single moment. This truth is not hidden. We see it everywhere we look. We see it on the grandest of scales, in the slow, patient erosion of mountains, the shifting of coastlines, the birth and death of distant stars in the night sky, the very ground beneath our feet, which feels so solid and dependable, is a temporary arrangement of matter on a planet hurtling through space. We see it on a human scale, in the unavoidable cycles of our own lives. Relationships begin with excitement and evolve. They deepen, they change, and sometimes they end. Friendships drift apart. Children grow up and leave home. Our own roles shift from child to parent to elder. Our careers have beginnings and endings. Our fortunes rise and fall. The new car we cherish eventually becomes old, scratched, and unreliable. The home we build will one day fall into disrepair. Nothing we can acquire or achieve is exempt from this universal law. But the most intimate and often most unsettling place to witness anicca is within our own being. Look at your body. It appears to be a solid, stable entity, the same you that woke up yesterday, but it is a river, not a statue. Millions of cells are dying and being replaced in this very moment. The physical form you inhabit today is composed of almost entirely different matter than the one you inhabited 7 years ago. It is a continuous process of growth, maintenance, decay, and renewal. It is not a thing, but an event. Now, turn your attention to your mind. Here, the flow of change is even more rapid and dramatic. Your thoughts, feelings, and moods are like the weather. One moment, there is the clear sky of peace. The next, the dark clouds of sadness, or the lightning flash of anger. Joy arises, stays for a while, and then, without fail, it subsides. Fear appears, grips us, and then it too dissolves. No emotional state is a permanent resident. No thought is a fixed feature of the landscape. They are transient visitors, arising due to causes and conditions, and then passing away when those conditions change. To cling to a happy mood is like trying to hold a cloud in your hands. To identify completely with a negative thought is to mistake a passing storm for the entire sky. The problem the source of our deepest suffering, is not anicca itself. Change is not the enemy. The suffering arises from our resistance to it, our war against reality. We live as though we are trying to build a permanent house on the surface of a frozen river. It might seem solid for a while. We can build our walls, arrange our furniture, and create a convincing illusion of stability. But we live in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety, because we know that deep down, the ice is not permanent ground. We know that spring is coming. The thaw is inevitable. The river of life will begin to flow again. The ice will crack, and our carefully constructed house, along with everything in it, will be swept away. This futile and stressful project of trying to freeze the river is the very nature of our clinging. We want our youth and health to last forever. We want our moments of happiness and success to be permanent. We want our loved ones to never leave us. On the other side, we want our moments of pain, failure, and discomfort to never happen or to vanish immediately. Both of these stances grasping at the pleasant and pushing away the unpleasant are a declaration of war against the fundamental nature of existence. Suffering is the friction generated by this struggle. It is the exhaustion of trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. There is a story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gautami had a single infant son, whom she adored more than life itself. One day, the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small, lifeless body and went from house to house, from person to person, desperately begging for a medicine that could restore her son. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man, seeing her profound suffering, directed her to the Buddha. She rushed to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one way to cure your sorrow. You must go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one or no child, no parent, no spouse, no friend has ever died." A flicker of hope ignited in Kisa Gautami's heart. It seemed like a simple task. She went to the first house and asked, "Can you spare a mustard seed for the Blessed One?" "Of course," the woman replied. As she was about to hand it over, Kisa Gautami asked, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my friend," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Please do not remind me of my deepest sorrow." Kisa Gautami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had mustard seeds to spare, but every family had also known the pain of loss. As dusk began to fall, the profound truth of the Buddha's instruction dawned on her. Her unbearable grief was not hers alone. Death was not a unique punishment visited upon her. It was a universal, inescapable part of life, a shared inheritance of every being. In that moment of deep seeing, her frantic clinging released its grip. She was no longer alone in her sorrow, but connected to all of humanity through this shared experience of impermanence. She was then able to tenderly bury her son and begin her own journey toward liberation. Kisa Gautami discovered what we all must discover. Accepting anicca is not a cause for despair, but the gateway to true freedom and a deeper appreciation for life. When we truly understand that every moment is precious and fleeting, we stop taking life for granted. The simple act of drinking a cup of tea, a conversation with a friend, the sight of a sunset, these moments become imbued with a sacred quality, because we know they can never be repeated in exactly the same way. We learn to savor life, to participate in it fully, rather than being lost in thought about the past or the future. Furthermore, this understanding gives us the grace to endure hardship. Just as the joyful moments pass, so too do the painful ones. When we are in the grip of a difficult emotion or a painful situation, the wisdom of impermanence is a comforting hand on our shoulder, reminding us, this too shall pass. It allows us to be with our pain without being completely consumed by it, knowing that it is a temporary weather pattern, not our permanent climate. Ultimately, accepting impermanence frees us from the exhausting and impossible job of trying to control the universe. We can relax our white-knuckled grip on life. We can learn to adapt, to be flexible, to dance with the changing currents rather than trying to swim against them. Anicca is not a flaw in the system, it is the system, and our peace comes from aligning ourselves with it. This brings us to the next, unavoidable step in our investigation. If everything is a flowing river of changer bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, our world, then what does that imply about the solid, unchanging I we believe ourselves to be? If all the parts that supposedly make up me are impermanent, where is the permanent self to be found? This question leads us from the river of Anicca to the even deeper ocean of the next great truth, the truth of no self. We have journeyed down the river of impermanence, Anicca, and seen that nothing in our external or internal world is fixed. Our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings are all in a state of constant, unrelenting flow. This leads us to the most radical, most challenging, and ultimately most liberating inquiry on the spiritual path. If everything we experience is changing, what about the experiencer? What about the I who is witnessing this flow? Surely, there must be a stable center, a permanent watcher behind the screen of consciousness, a soul that endures from moment to moment and from birth to death. It is this presumed self that we have spent our lives protecting with the heavy armor of the ego. It is for this self that we thirst and cling. The Buddha invites us to turn the light of investigation directly onto this presumed entity to see if we can actually find it. This investigation leads to the teaching of anatta, or no self. Before we proceed, it is crucial to understand what this does not mean. Anatta is not a declaration that you do not exist, that you are nothing. It is not a philosophy of nihilism or despair. It is rather a profound insight into the way you exist, not as a fixed, separate object, but as a dynamic, open, and interconnected process. It is the key that unlocks the prison of the self we have so carefully constructed. To investigate the self, the Buddha provided a systematic method. He suggested we deconstruct our experience into its fundamental components, what he called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 khandhas. These are the 5 heaps or bundles of experience that we mistake for a solid, singular self. Let us, with gentle curiosity, look through these bundles to see if we can find a permanent me. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is our physical body and the entire material world. Look at your body. Is it truly you? It is impermanent. It was born. It grows. It will decay. It is not under your complete control. It gets sick. It gets tired. It ages against your will. Furthermore, it is composed entirely of non-body elements. The water in it was once a cloud. The carbon in its cells was forged in a star. The food that builds it comes from the earth. If it is constantly changing, not fully under your command, and made of things that are not you, how can it be your true, unchanging self? It is a temporary residence, not the resident. So, we look deeper. The second aggregate is feeling, or Vedana. This refers not to complex emotions, but to the raw, immediate sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. Every experience is tinged with one of three feeling tones: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Are these feelings me? Think of how quickly they change. One moment, there is the pleasure of a warm drink. The next, the discomfort of an awkward silence. The next, the neutral feeling of sitting in a chair. They are as fleeting and unreliable as the weather. If your sense of self were based on these feelings, your identity would shift from moment to moment. You would be happy, then sad, then neutral, with no underlying continuity. Clearly, this constant stream of pleasant and unpleasant sensations cannot be the stable core of who you are. The third aggregate is perception, or sanya. This is the mental faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It's the part of the mind that sees a collection of colors and shapes and says, tree, or feels a certain vibration and says, sadness. Is this process of labeling our true self. This faculty is entirely conditioned by our past, our culture, our language, and our memories. The same object can be perceived as beautiful by one person, ugly by another, and completely ignored by a third. Our perceptions are not a pure reflection of reality. They are an interpretation. This conditioned, biased, and ever-shifting process of recognition cannot be the unchanging essence of our being. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a very broad and important category that includes all of our volitional activities, our habits, intentions, thoughts, opinions, prejudices, and desires. This is the voice in our head, the storyteller, the planner, the warrior. This is the very activity of the ego creating its stories and defending its territory. Are these mental formations you? We have already seen how they are in constant flux. We have thousands of thoughts a day, often contradictory. Our opinions change. Our desires shift. Our moods swing. These are the clouds that drift across the sky of the mind, not the sky itself. To identify with this chaotic chatter is to mistake the activity on the surface of the ocean for the deep, silent water below. This leaves the fifth and final aggregate, consciousness, or vijnana. This is the raw faculty of awareness itself, the simple knowing that arises when a sense organ connects with a sense object. Eye consciousness arises when the eye meets a form. Ear consciousness arises when the ear meets a sound. This might seem like the final candidate for the self, the ultimate watcher, but the Buddha pointed out that even consciousness is not a singular, independent entity. It is conditioned. It arises because of a contact. There is no free-floating, monolithic consciousness. There is only seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and thinking, each arising and passing away in response to conditions. There is awareness, but we cannot find a permanent awarer behind it all. After this exhaustive investigation, we find ourselves in a curious position. We have looked through all the bundles that make up our experience and have failed to find a separate, permanent self anywhere. This can be understood through the simple image of an onion. If you wanted to find the core or essence of an onion, you would begin by peeling off the outer layer. You examine it, but realize it's just a layer. So you peel off the next one, and the next, and the next. As you continue, you realize that there is no central solid onionness inside. The onion simply is the totality of its interdependent layers. Once you have peeled away all the layers, you are left with nothing. The self is just like that onion. It is a composite of the 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. It is a name we give to the collection of these processes. But when we look for a core, an owner of the aggregates, we find nothing. This is the insight of anatta. This is not a reason for despair. It is the ultimate good news. This is liberation. If there is no fixed, solid self, there is no one who needs to be defended. The great, exhausting, lifelong project of polishing and protecting the armor of the ego is revealed to be based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The general is not just wearing the armor, he is the armor. And in seeing this, he can simply stop the process of creating it. There is no fragile object to be broken, no permanent stain to be acquired, no ultimate failure to be had. The burden of being a somebody is lifted. This insight also opens the door to a profound understanding of emptiness, or shunyata. Emptiness does not mean a black void of nothingness. It means empty of a separate, independent self. A wave in the ocean is empty of a separate identity. Its existence is entirely dependent on the ocean, the wind, the moon, and all the other conditions that allow it to arise. It is full of the ocean. In the same way, you are empty of a separate self, but you are full of the entire universe. You are full of your parents and ancestors, the sun that grew the food you ate, the air you are breathing, the culture that shaped your thoughts. The idea of you as a separate entity is an illusion. The reality is a seamless, interconnected web of life. Seeing this dissolves the fear, alienation, and loneliness that comes from feeling like a fragile ego confronting a hostile universe. Thus, anatta is not the denial of your life, but the discovery of its true nature. You are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. You are not an isolated island, but a wave in the boundless ocean of being. The self you have been trying so hard to perfect and protect is a story, a ghost, a construct. And seeing this allows you to relax, to let go, and to participate in the flow of life with a newfound lightness and freedom. But this profound realization raises an immediate and practical question. If there is no permanent self, no enduring soul who travels from one moment to the next, then how can there be moral responsibility? Who performs an action and who reaps its consequences? If the person who acts is gone in the next moment, how can our choices have meaning? To resolve this apparent paradox, we must now turn to the subtle and often misunderstood law that governs this seamless flow of becoming, the law of karma. We have arrived at a seeming paradox. Our investigation has revealed the truth of anatta, no self, showing us that there is no fixed, enduring entity at the center of our experience. We are not a static object, but a flowing stream of interconnected processes. Yet, if the I who performs an action is gone in the very next moment, replaced by a new configuration of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, then who is left to be responsible for that action? How can there be moral accountability in a world without a permanent self? Does this mean our choices are meaningless? It is to resolve this profound question that we must now explore the natural law of karma. In the West, the word karma is often misunderstood. It is frequently seen as a kind of cosmic justice system, a supernatural force that doles out rewards and punishments. We think of it as what goes around comes around, a simple, almost mechanical balancing of the scales. But this is a distortion. The Buddhist understanding of karma, or karma, in Pali, is far more subtle, intimate, and empowering. It is not a system of divine retribution, but a natural law of the universe, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. It is the law of cause and effect, applied to the realm of human intention, the very heart of karma, lies in a single word, cetana. The Buddha himself said, "It is volition, monks, that I call karma." Having willed, one acts through body, speech, or mind. This is the crucial key. Karma is not the result. It is the intention, the volition, the conscious will behind the action. An action that is purely accidental, with no intention behind it, does not create the same kind of karmic fruit. The moral quality of our experience is shaped not by external events, but by the internal quality of our own will. Actions born from intentions of generosity, kindness, and clarity are considered skillful, kusala. They are skillful because, like a well-planted seed, they naturally lead to fruits of happiness, peace, and well-being. Conversely, actions born from intentions of greed, hatred, and delusion are considered unskillful, akusala. They are unskillful because they inevitably lead to fruits of suffering, conflict, and confusion for ourselves and for others. This is not a judgment from an external God, but the inherent nature of the mind itself. Planting an apple seed will not result in a thorny vine. Planting a seed of anger will not result in a harvest of peace. The law is simply this: the intention behind the action determines the quality of the experience that follows. This directly addresses the paradox of anatta. Karma does not require a permanent, unchanging soul to operate. It requires only a continuity of consciousness, a flowing stream of cause and effect. Think of one candle flame lighting another. The flame on the second candle is not the same as the first, yet it is not entirely different either. It is a direct continuation, its existence entirely dependent on the first. In the same way, the you of this moment inherits the consequences of the you of the previous moment. The consciousness that experiences the result of an action is not the identical self that performed it, but it is the direct and seamless continuation of that stream of becoming. The chain of causality is unbroken, even without a fixed, unchanging link. This brings us to the empowering parable of the farmer. A farmer stands in his field. He has no control over the vast, powerful forces of nature. He cannot command the sun to shine, nor can he stop the rain from falling. He cannot prevent a drought or a flood. These external conditions are like the karma we have inherited from the past, the circumstances into which we are born. To rail against them, to complain that the weather is unfair, is a useless expenditure of energy. The wise farmer does not waste his time in this way. He accepts the weather as it is. His power, his entire sphere of influence, lies in the present moment. He has the power to choose what seeds he will plant today. He can choose to sow seeds of wheat and corn, which will nourish him, or he can choose to sow seeds of weeds and poison ivy, which will bring him hardship. Furthermore, he has the power to tend to his field. He can choose to cultivate the soil, to water the wholesome plants, and to patiently remove the weeds. The harvest he reaps in the autumn is not a reward or punishment from a sky god. It is the natural, unavoidable result of the seeds he planted and the care he took in the present. We are all that farmer. Our mind is the field. Our circumstances are the weather, the accumulated results of past actions. Our present intentions are the seeds. Every moment offers us a new choice. We can plant a seed of patience in a moment of anger. We can plant a seed of generosity when faced with greed. We can plant a seed of understanding when we encounter confusion. Each of these skillful intentions, no matter how small, is a wholesome seed planted in the field of our mind. With repeated practice, these seeds sprout. They become our habits, our character, and ultimately, our destiny. This understanding completely reframes our relationship with our lives. It liberates us from the prison of victimhood. When we understand karma, we realize that while we may not be responsible for the situation we find ourselves in, we are 100% responsible for how we choose to respond to it. Our response, our intention in this very moment, is the seed of our future happiness. This puts the locus of control firmly back into our own hands. We are not puppets of fate, nor are we helpless victims of circumstance. We are the architects of our own experience. The life we are living today is, in large part, the result of the intentions and choices we made in the past. The life we will live tomorrow is being shaped by the intentions we are cultivating right now. This is a profound and sometimes challenging responsibility, but it is also the source of ultimate freedom. It means that change is always possible. No matter how difficult our circumstances, no matter how deeply ingrained our unskillful habits may be, the present moment is always a fresh opportunity to plant a new kind of seed. This does not mean that the path is easy or that results are always instantaneous. The farmer knows that a seed planted today does not become a full-grown plant tomorrow. It requires patience, diligence, and faith in the process. Likewise, we may have a field full of weeds from years of planting unskillful seeds of anger or jealousy. Our work is not to curse the weeds, but to begin, patiently and persistently, to cultivate the soil and plant the seeds of kindness and mindfulness. Over time, the wholesome plants will grow stronger, their roots will deepen, and they will naturally begin to crowd out the weeds. Our task is not to violently purify ourselves, but to skillfully cultivate the good. We become gardeners of our own hearts. Understanding this intricate, natural law of cause and effect, powered by intention and unfolding across a stream of continuous consciousness, gives us a moral compass. It gives our choices weight and meaning. It shows us that every thought, every word, and every action matters, because each is a seed that will bear fruit. With this wisdom as our foundation, we are now ready to explore the practical path that makes use of these insights. How do we navigate life skillfully, avoiding the extremes that cause us suffering? The answer lies in the elegant and timeless principle known as the middle way. We have now traveled into the deep and sometimes challenging territory of Buddhist thought. We have looked honestly at the universal experience of dukkha, its origin in our own thirsting and clinging, the illusory nature of the solid self, and the impersonal law of karma that governs the flow of our lives. Faced with these profound truths, a very practical question arises. How then shall we live? Knowing all this, how are we to walk through the world? The answer lies not in a rigid set of commandments, but in a living, breathing principle, a path of profound elegance and balance known as the middle way. This principle is the very heart of the Buddha's practical guidance for humanity. It is the art of navigating the treacherous currents of life without being thrown against the sharp rocks of extremes. The Buddha's discovery of this path was not a matter of abstract philosophy. It was forged in the fire of his own lived experience. He personally traveled to the very end of both opposing roads and found them to be dead ends. His early life as Prince Siddhartha was the embodiment of the first extreme, the path of sensual indulgence. He was raised in a world of unimaginable luxury, meticulously shielded from every form of unpleasantness. He had multiple palaces, the finest silks, the most delicious foods, and constant entertainment. Every desire was gratified the moment it arose. He lived a life that modern consumer culture holds up as the ultimate fantasy. Yet, he found that this endless pursuit of pleasure did not lead to lasting happiness. Instead, it created a subtle but persistent anxiety. a hollowness in the heart of all the pleasure. He realized that a happiness dependent on external conditions was fragile, and the fear of losing that happiness was a constant shadow companion. Driven by this profound dissatisfaction, he renounced his palace and embarked upon the second extreme, the path of severe asceticism. Believing that the body and its desires were the enemy, he joined a group of ascetics and subjected himself to unimaginable self-mortification. He practiced extreme fasting until his ribs protruded like a picket fence, and he could feel his spine through his stomach. He held his breath until he felt sharp, piercing pains in his head. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed himself to the harshest elements. He was trying to conquer his own mind and body through sheer force of will, to burn away all desire through self-punishment. He followed this path with unmatched determination for 6 long years, but it too proved to be a failure. This extreme denial did not lead to wisdom or liberation. It led only to a severely weakened body and a mind that was agitated and tormented. It nearly cost him his life. One day, collapsed and near death by a river, he accepted a simple bowl of milk rice from a village girl named Sujata. As the nourishment spread through his body, a memory arose, and with it, a profound insight. He remembered a time in his youth, sitting under a rose apple tree while his father performed a state ceremony. In that moment of simple being, he had spontaneously entered a state of meditative calm and bliss. It was a state of happiness that was not dependent on sense pleasure, nor was it born from punishment. It was a state of natural balance. This memory, combined with his recent experiences, led him to the great discovery of the middle way. The insight is often explained through the parable of the sitar player. The Buddha realized that tuning the instrument of the mind is like tuning a sitar or a lute. A musician knows that if a string is wound too tightly, it will produce a sharp, jarring, unpleasant sound, and it will be under so much tension that it will easily snap. This is the path of asceticism. Too much striving, too much tension, too much grim and forceful effort. It is unsustainable and leads only to breakage. On the other hand, if the string is left too loose, it will produce a dull, lifeless thud or no sound at all. It is incapable of producing music. This is the path of sensual indulgence. Too much laxity, no discipline, no focus. A life dissipated by the constant pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The beautiful, resonant, and true music arises only when the string is tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose. This perfect tuning is the middle way. This is not a weak or timid compromise. It is not an encouragement to be lukewarm or mediocre. On the contrary, the middle way is a path of supreme skill and intelligence. The extremes are easy. They are mindless. One is a blind chase after pleasure. The other is a blind flight from pain. The middle way requires us to be awake, attentive, and exquisitely sensitive to the needs of the present moment. It is the path of dynamic balance. In our modern lives, we are constantly being pulled toward these two extremes. The tight string of asceticism can be seen in our hustle culture, where burnout is a status symbol and rest is seen as a weakness. It manifests in obsessive and punishing fitness regimes, in the self-flagellation of perfectionism, and in a spiritual practice that is driven by grim, joyless striving. The loose string of indulgence is even more pervasive. It is the call of consumerism, the promise of happiness through the next purchase, the endless scroll through social media, the binge-watching of entertainment to numb our inner discomfort. It is the path of distraction, instant gratification, and the avoidance of any meaningful challenge. The middle way invites us to find the skillful balance in all areas of our lives. In our work, it means applying ourselves with diligence and passion, but also recognizing the wisdom of rest, play, and recovery. It is purpose without obsession. In our relationship with our bodies, it means nourishing ourselves with healthy food, but without neurotic fixation, and enjoying treats without guilt. It means engaging in moderate exercise that brings joy and vitality, not punishment. It means treating our body with the respect due to a precious instrument, not an object of either glorification or contempt. In our consumption, it is the wisdom of sufficiency, of knowing what is truly enough. It is the ability to appreciate beauty and enjoy simple pleasures without becoming enslaved by an insatiable hunger for more. In our spiritual practice itself, it is the gentle and persistent application of effort. It is being disciplined without being rigid, and being relaxed without being lazy. It is what is known as effortless effort, where our practice becomes as natural and sustained as our own breathing. To walk this path is to become a true artist of living. It requires us to pay close attention, to listen deeply to the feedback from our own body and mind, and to make constant, subtle adjustments. Sometimes we need to tighten the string with a little more discipline. At other times, we need to loosen it with a little more rest and self-compassion. The wisdom lies in knowing which is needed and when. This wisdom is one of the two great wings that allow us to fly. The other, equally essential wing, is the gentle touch required to tune the strings without causing them to break. This gentle, skillful touch is the quality of compassion. To truly walk the middle way, we must learn to apply it not only to our actions, but to ourselves. The imperfect musician learning to play this beautiful, complex instrument of a human life. We must now explore this vital quality of the heart, the boundless warmth of karuna, or compassion. To walk the middle way is an art, the art of tuning the precious instrument of our life. This art requires two essential qualities, like the two wings of a great bird. The first wing is wisdom, the clarity of mind to see things as they are, which we have been exploring through the teachings of impermanence, no self, and karma. The second wing, without which wisdom cannot fly, is compassion. This is the quality of the heart that provides the gentle, steady touch needed to guide our actions and transform our understanding into a living, breathing reality. In the Pali language, this compassion is called karuna. It is one of the most vital and often misunderstood concepts on the path. Karuna is not pity. This distinction is crucial. Pity looks down from above. It comes from a place of separation, of feeling superior. When we pity someone, we create a distance between me, the one who is fortunate and okay, and you, the one who is suffering and unfortunate. Pity can feel satisfying to the ego, but it does not truly connect or heal. Karuna, true compassion, is radically different. It is the heart's immediate and visceral response to seeing suffering. The word itself suggests a trembling or quivering of the heart. It is not looking down, but meeting another at eye level. It is the recognition of our shared vulnerability, the deep knowing that says, I understand this pain. I too have felt sorrow, fear, and loss. It is the sincere and active wish for that being to be free from their suffering. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separation. It is the felt sense of our profound interconnectedness. For this boundless compassion to be authentic and sustainable, it must begin at home. It must begin with ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. We live with a relentless inner critic, a voice that judges, shames, and belittles us with a harshness we would never dream of inflicting on another person, let alone a friend. We demand perfection from ourselves, and when we inevitably fall short, we punish ourselves with scorn. We believe that this inner drill sergeant is necessary for motivation, but in truth, it is the source of our anxiety and paralysis. Trying to cultivate compassion for others while maintaining a state of war with ourselves is like trying to grow a beautiful garden while poisoning the soil. It is unsustainable. It leads to what is often called compassion fatigue, a state of emotional exhaustion and burnout. True compassion for others flows naturally from a heart that has learned to be kind to itself. Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is not about letting ourselves off the hook for unskillful behavior. It is simply the act of extending the same kindness to ourselves that we would offer to a dear friend. When a friend fails or makes a mistake, we don't berate them. We offer them comfort, perspective, and encouragement. We say, "You are human. We all make mistakes. What can we learn from this? Let's begin again." Self-compassion is the practice of directing this same gentle, wise voice inward. It is the understanding that healing and growth arise from a place of safety and acceptance, not from a place of fear and self-loathing. It is the not too tight quality of the middle way, applied to our own heart. The Buddha himself was the perfect embodiment of this active, fearless compassion. There is a story that reveals its profound nature. One day, the Buddha was walking through the monastery when he came upon a monk named Putigata Tissa. This monk was gravely ill with a terrible disease that caused his skin to break out in oozing sores. The illness was so foul-smelling and unpleasant that the other monks, overcome by their own aversion, had completely abandoned him. He was left to lie alone in his own filth, helpless and suffering. The Buddha, seeing his condition, went directly to him. He then turned to his attendant, Ananda, and asked for water to be boiled. While the water was heating, the Buddha himself began to clean the monk's soiled robes. When the water was ready, the Buddha, the enlightened one, the teacher of gods and humans, gently and tenderly began to wash the sick monk's body with his own hands, as a mother would care for her child. After cleaning him and dressing him in fresh robes, he helped him to lie down comfortably. He then gathered the other monks and asked them, "Why have you neglected this man?" They confessed that they had stayed away because of his repellent illness. The Buddha then spoke these powerful words: "Monks, you have no mother and no father to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who else will? Whoever would tend to me, let him tend to the sick." In this single act, the Buddha taught the true meaning of karuna. It is not an abstract sentiment. It is practical, hands-on, and courageous. It overcomes aversion and sees the suffering being behind the unpleasant appearance. It is the recognition that in caring for the most vulnerable among us, we are caring for the highest part of ourselves. Compassion, however, cannot operate effectively in a vacuum. For it to be truly beneficial, it must be guided by wisdom. These two qualities, compassion and wisdom, are the two wings of the bird, and they must be developed in balance. Wisdom, without compassion, can be cold, dry, and sterile. One can have a brilliant intellectual understanding of all the Buddhist doctrines impermanence, no self, the causes of suffering, and yet remain arrogant, judgmental, and unkind. This kind of wisdom is just another tool for the ego. It lacks the warmth that is necessary to heal oneself or others. On the other hand, compassion without wisdom can be foolish and even harmful. This is sometimes called idiot compassion. It is a well-meaning sentimentality that, lacking a deep understanding of cause and effect, can inadvertently make a situation worse. It is the act of giving money to an alcoholic out of a sense of pity, which only enables their addiction. It is trying to protect someone from all pain, which prevents them from learning their own lessons and developing their own strength. Unwise compassion can also lead to burnout, because it does not see the true root of suffering in craving and clinging, and so it tries to fix an endless sea of external problems, an impossible and exhausting task. True liberation arises when these two wings work in perfect harmony. Wisdom understands the deep, impersonal nature of suffering, that it is caused by internal states of craving and ignorance. Compassion is the heart's response to the felt experience of that suffering, in ourselves and in others. Wisdom guides compassion, allowing it to act in ways that are truly effective and beneficial, addressing the root causes rather than just the symptoms. Compassion fuels wisdom, providing the motivation to undertake the hard work of the path, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of all beings. When you see a child fall, wisdom understands the law of gravity, but compassion is what makes you rush to pick the child up. In the same way, wisdom understands the law of karma, but compassion is what motivates us to plant seeds of kindness. Compassion is the antidote to the ego's project of separation. It is the universal solvent that dissolves the hard walls we build between self and other, allowing us to see that their suffering is our suffering, and our freedom is inseparable from their freedom. We have now explored the core realities of our condition, the path of balance, and the essential quality of the heart. We have gathered all the essential pieces of the puzzle. It is now time to step back and look at the original map the Buddha provided, to see, with our new, deeper understanding, how all these pieces fit together into a perfect and complete blueprint for freedom. We must revisit the Four Noble Truths. We have walked a long and sometimes challenging path of inquiry together. We have stared into the face of modern anxiety, diagnosed the universal condition of dukkha, and traced its origins to the burning thirst of tanha. We have investigated the phantom-like nature of the ego, witnessed the relentless river of impermanence, and seen how the law of karma shapes our lives through intention. We have learned the importance of walking the balanced middle way, guided by the gentle, healing touch of compassion. It is now time to pause and integrate these profound insights. We will return to the very first teaching the Buddha offered after his enlightenment, the core framework upon which all other teachings rest. We will revisit the Four Noble Truths, but this time, we will see them not as a simple list to be memorized, but as a living, dynamic blueprint for freedom, illuminated by the deeper understanding we have cultivated. The most helpful way to understand this framework is to see the Buddha not as a god, but as a master physician of the mind, and the Four Noble Truths as the most compassionate and effective medical charter ever devised. The first step any skilled physician must take is to make an honest diagnosis of the illness. This is the first noble truth. There is dukkha. As we have seen, this is not a pessimistic statement that life is miserable. It is a courageous and realistic acknowledgement that our ordinary, unawakened existence is characterized by a fundamental unsatisfactoriness. We now understand that this dukkha is not just the obvious pain of sickness and loss. It is the subtle suffering caused by our war against impermanence, the anxiety of clinging to things that are destined to change. It is the friction created by our identification with a fragile, constructed self, the heavy burden of wearing the ego's armor. The first truth is a profound act of compassion. The physician gently tells us, the discomfort you feel, the sense that something is not quite right, is real. It is not your fault. It is a shared, universal condition. Let us now look at it clearly, without fear. Once the illness is diagnosed, the competent physician proceeds to the second step, identifying its cause. This is the second noble truth. The origin of dukkha is tanha, the thirsting and clinging of the mind. The physician assures us that our suffering is not random, nor is it a punishment from an external force. It has a specific, identifiable cause, and that cause lies within our own hearts and minds. We have explored this cause in depth. It is the craving for sense pleasures, the thirst to become somebody, and the aversion that pushes away unpleasantness. It is the engine of karma, the force of volition that plants the seeds of our future experience with every thought, word, and deed. The second truth is a message of profound empowerment. It tells us that the cause of our suffering is not out there in the world we cannot control, but in here, in the workings of our own mind, which we can learn to understand and transform. The source of the poison is also the source of the antidote. This leads us to the third and most joyful step in the medical process, the prognosis. Having diagnosed the illness and identified its cause, the great physician now delivers the wonderful news. Because the illness has a specific cause, it also has a specific end. A cure is possible. This is the third noble truth. There is nirodha, the cessation of dukkha. This is the promise that liberation is not a myth or a distant dream, but an achievable reality. The state of cessation is known as nibbana or nirvana. This is another widely misunderstood term. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise you go to after you die. It is not a state of blissful annihilation or zombie-like emptiness. The word nibbana literally means to extinguish or to unbind. What is extinguished? The three fires of greed, hatred, and delusion that fuel our suffering. What are we unbound from? The chains of craving, clinging, and the endless cycle of reactive becoming. Nirvana is the natural state of the mind when it is no longer obscured by the clouds of our conditioning. It is the peace that is revealed when the war against reality ceases. It is the freedom that dawns when we stop clinging to an illusory self. It is not something we must create or acquire, but a reality we can uncover. A peace that is available in this very life, in this very moment, when the causes of suffering are abandoned. Finally, having declared that a cure is possible, the physician provides the fourth and final step, the detailed prescription and treatment plan to bring about that cure. This is the fourth noble truth. There is the magga, the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. The Buddha did not just point to a distant shore of peace. He provided a detailed, practical, and time-tested map to get there. This map is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a comprehensive program for living that touches every aspect of our being. It is the embodiment of the middle way, avoiding the extremes of indulgence and denial. This path is not a linear sequence of steps, but a set of 8 interconnected practices that support and deepen one another. To make it easier to understand, they are often grouped into 3 essential trainings. The first is the training in wisdom, panya, which includes right view, seeing reality as it is, and right intention, aligning our hearts with kindness and renunciation. The second is the training in ethical conduct, sila, which includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood, living our lives in a way that is harmless, compassionate, and supportive of our own and others' well-being. The third is the training in mental discipline, samadhi, which includes right effort, the gentle persistence to cultivate wholesome states, right mindfulness, the moment-to-moment awareness of our own experience, and right concentration, the ability to unify and steady the mind. This complete framework, from diagnosis to cure, is the ultimate expression of optimistic realism. It does not deny the reality of our pain, but it also refuses to despair. It treats us as intelligent, dignified beings who are capable of understanding our own condition and undertaking our own healing. It is a path of empowerment, not dependency. It places the key to our own liberation directly into our hands. We have now come full circle in our journey of understanding. We have seen how the profound truths of impermanence, no self, karma, and compassion all illuminate this timeless four-part structure. We have the map, we have the diagnosis, and the prescription. The only thing left is to begin the treatment. The journey now shifts from the philosophical to the eminently practical. We must begin to walk the Eightfold Path, starting with the very foundation of mental discipline, the practice that anchors and enables all the others. We must learn to work with our own minds directly. We must learn the simple, yet profound, art of returning to the present moment. We must learn to breathe. We stand now at the trailhead of the path. We have the map of the Four Noble Truths. We have an understanding of the terrain, and we have oriented our hearts with the compass of the middle way. The journey of mental discipline begins not with a great leap, but with a single, simple, conscious step. It begins with the breath. The practice of mindfulness of breathing, known in Pali as anapanasati, is the foundation stone of the entire edifice of meditation. It is the root system from which the tree of wisdom grows. Its beauty lies in its utter simplicity and its profound accessibility. The breath is our most faithful companion. It is with us from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It requires no special equipment, no particular belief, and no specific location. It is utterly free and available to everyone. And most importantly, the breath is always, without exception, in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is to be anchored in the here and now, the only place where life is actually happening. It is the perfect antidote to a mind that is constantly lost in memories of the past or anxieties about the future. The breath is the bridge between our conscious and unconscious worlds, and it is a perfect mirror of our inner state. When we are anxious, our breath is short and shallow. When we are at peace, it is long and deep. By simply learning to observe it, we begin to learn about ourselves. Let us begin the practice itself. First, find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, with your legs crossed in a way that is comfortable for you, or you can sit upright in a chair, with your feet flat on the floor. The key is to keep the spine relatively straight, but not rigid. This encourages alertness. Imagine a string gently pulling the crown of your head toward the sky, elongating your spine. Allow your shoulders to relax, your hands to rest gently in your lap, and your facial muscles to soften. You can gently close your eyes, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open, with a soft, unfocused gaze directed toward the floor a few feet in front of you. This is a posture of wakeful presence, of being ready and receptive. Now, bring your attention to the feeling of the breath as it moves in and out of your body. The instruction is not to think about the breath, but to feel its physical sensations. You are not trying to control your breathing in any way. Let it be natural. Let it be short, if it's short, deep, if it's deep. Your only job is to be the gentle, curious observer. To help stabilize your attention, you might choose a primary anchor point. For some, this is the tip of the nostrils, feeling the cool sensation of the air as it enters and the slightly warmer sensation as it leaves. For others, it is the abdomen, feeling the gentle rise on the in-breath and the subtle fall on the out-breath. Choose one of these spots and let your attention rest there, as a butterfly rests on a flower. Feel one full breath, then another, and another. It will not be long before you notice that your mind has wandered away. You will find yourself lost in a thought, a memory, a plan, or a fantasy. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. This is simply what minds do. The mind's job is to produce thoughts, just as a radio's job is to produce sound. To expect your mind to be silent is a recipe for frustration. The true practice of meditation begins in the moment you realize you have been distracted. This is a golden moment, a moment of mindfulness. When this happens, the practice is to follow 3 simple steps. First, gently recognize that the mind has wandered. You can even say a soft mental note, thinking or wandering. Do this without any judgment or criticism, with the same gentle tone you would use to notice a cloud passing in the sky. Second, softly release the storyline. You don't need to analyze the thought or follow it any further. Simply let it go. Third, and most importantly, kindly return your attention to the feeling of the breath at your chosen anchor point. This process of wandering, recognizing, releasing, and returning is the meditation. Each time you guide your attention back to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. It is like a single bicep curl for the brain. There is a traditional story that perfectly illustrates this process. Imagine our untamed mind is like a wild, powerful elephant. For years, it has been free to roam wherever it pleases, crashing through the jungle of our thoughts, following any scent of pleasure or threat of danger. To train this elephant, a wise trainer does not beat it into submission. They lead it to a sturdy, deeply rooted post and tie it to the post with a strong rope. The post is the breath. The rope is mindfulness. At first, the elephant is furious. It trumpets and roars, pulling and straining against the rope, trying desperately to run back into the familiar jungle of distraction. It will exhaust itself in this struggle. The trainer simply ensures the post is firm and the rope is strong. They wait with patience. Gradually, over time, the elephant realizes that its struggle is futile. It learns that it cannot escape, and in this realization, it begins to calm down. Eventually, it will lie down peacefully at the foot of the post, content and at rest. Our mind is exactly like this elephant. When we first ask it to stay with the breath, it will rebel. It will pull us into the past and the future. Our job is not to fight with the mind, but to gently, patiently, and persistently keep bringing it back to the anchor of the breath. Over time, the mind learns that it can find a deep and satisfying rest in the simplicity of the present moment. This simple practice has profound effects. On a physiological level, it calms the nervous system, shifting us out of the anxious fight or flight mode and into the restorative rest and digest mode. It can lower blood pressure and reduce stress hormones. On a mental level, it develops concentration and clarity. As the mind becomes steadier, we begin to see our thoughts and feelings more clearly, not as solid realities, but as transient events that arise and pass away. This creates a crucial space of wisdom between a stimulus and our reaction, allowing us to respond to life with more intention and less reactivity. On a spiritual level, this practice is a homecoming. It is a return to the quiet, spacious awareness that is our true nature, the peaceful sky that was always here behind the turbulent weather of our thoughts. It is the radical act of being present for our own life. This practice of seated meditation is the formal training, the time we set aside to strengthen our mental muscles. It is like going to the gym, but the true test of this strength is how we use it in our daily lives. How do we carry this calm, centered awareness with us when we leave the cushion and step into the busy, demanding world? How do we transform every moment into an opportunity for practice? This is our next exploration. We have learned to quiet the mind, to gently tether our wild elephant of a consciousness to the sturdy post of the breath. This formal seated meditation is our training ground, our sanctuary, the place where we strengthen the muscle of attention. But the purpose of strengthening a muscle is not to admire it in the gym. It is to use it effectively in our lives. The purpose of meditation is not to create a peaceful hour on a cushion, but to infuse our entire life with that same quality of peace and awareness. The great challenge and the great opportunity now is to take this practice off the cushion and carry it with us into the world. This is the practice of mindfulness in daily life. It is the art of transforming the mundane into the sacred and the ordinary into the extraordinary, simply by paying attention. First, we must be clear about what mindfulness is. It is not, as is often assumed, an attempt to empty the mind or to stop our thoughts. That is an impossible task that only leads to frustration. Mindfulness is simply the gentle, non-judgmental awareness of what is happening as it is happening. It is the act of knowing what you are doing while you are doing it. Most of us spend our lives on autopilot. We drive to work and arrive with no memory of the journey. We eat a meal while scrolling on our phone, tasting nothing. We have a conversation with a loved one while our mind is a million miles away, planning our next task. We are physically present, but mentally absent. This is a life half-lived, a ghostly existence where we are never fully where we are. The practice of daily mindfulness is the simple invitation to show up for your own life. Let us begin with one of the most common and often rushed activities, eating a meal. Usually, we eat mechanically, barely noticing the food as we think about what we have to do next. A mindful meal is a completely different experience. Before you take the first bite, pause. Look at the food on your plate. See the colors, the textures, the shapes. Take a moment to smell its aroma. As you take the first bite, do it slowly. Notice the sensations in your mouth, the taste, the texture of the food on your tongue, the act of chewing. Try to follow the food all the way down. Put your fork down between bites. Notice the impulse to immediately reach for the next mouthful. You can also reflect on the profound interconnectedness that has brought this food to your plate. This single carrot contains the sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer who tended it, the driver who transported it, the person who prepared it. To eat mindfully is to recognize this web of life, to feel a sense of gratitude, and to truly nourish your body, not just refuel it. Now, let us consider an activity we often think of as a chore, washing the dishes. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught that our approach to this simple task reveals our approach to life itself. He said that if you are washing the dishes simply to get them over with, so you can go and have a cup of tea, then you are not really washing the dishes. In fact, you will not be able to truly enjoy your tea either, because your mind will already be rushing on to the next thing. You are living in the future, and your life is slipping by unnoticed. The practice is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes. While you are standing at the sink, be fully present. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice the weight of the plate, the smooth, slick feeling of the soap. See the iridescent colors in the bubbles. Hear the sound of the sponge scrubbing away the remnants of the meal. When you are washing the dishes like this, the task is no longer a chore. It is a meditation. It is a moment of peace, a simple act of being fully alive. In that moment, you are not wrestling with the past or worrying about the future. You are simply, peacefully, washing the dishes. This is freedom. This same principle can be applied to any movement. Consider the simple act of walking. We walk all the time, but usually our minds are somewhere else entirely. We are walking to the car, to a meeting, to the store, and our head is filled with the destination. Mindful walking, or walking meditation, is the practice of bringing your attention to the raw sensations of the act itself. As you walk, feel the sensation of your foot lifting from the ground. Feel it moving through the air. Feel the contact as your heel touches down, then the ball of your foot, then your toes. Feel the subtle transfer of weight from one leg to the other. You don't need to walk in a special way or at a special speed. You are just bringing your awareness home to your body. This is an incredibly grounding practice. When your mind is spinning with anxiety or caught in a loop of obsessive thinking, bringing your attention down into the simple, solid, rhythmic reality of your feet on the earth can be a powerful anchor, bringing you back to the sanity of the present moment. We can also introduce bells of mindfulness into our day. These are not necessarily physical bells. We can use any recurring sound as a reminder to come back to ourselves. The ringing of the telephone, the chime of a new email, a police siren in the distance, a bird singing outside the window. Instead of seeing these sounds as interruptions or annoyances, we can learn to see them as invitations. When you hear one of these sounds, let it be a signal to pause, just for a moment. Stop what you are doing. Take one conscious in-breath and one conscious out-breath. Notice the state of your body. Notice the state of your mind. Then, you can continue with your day. Sprinkling these micro moments of presence throughout your day is like creating small oases of peace in the desert of our busyness. It prevents us from getting completely lost for hours at a time. The goal is not to be mindful every single second of every single day. This would be an impossible standard and would only create more tension. The practice is much gentler. It is simply the intention to return, again and again, whenever we remember. Each time we notice we have been lost on autopilot, and we gently come back to the present moment, that is a moment of success. Mindfulness, then, is not another thing to add to your already crowded to-do list. It is a different way of being with your life as it unfolds. It is a quality of loving attention that you can bring to any activity. It is the discovery that peace is not contingent on getting all your work done, or achieving some future goal, or going on a special retreat. Peace is available right here, in the feeling of warm water on your hands, in the taste of your food, in the sensation of your feet on the ground. It is found in the humble, simple, and immediate reality of the present moment. It is one thing, however, to be mindfully present with a neutral or pleasant activity. It is another thing entirely to stay present when our inner world is a raging storm. What happens when the present moment is filled, not with the warmth of dishwater, but with the fire of anger, the icy grip of fear, or the heavy weight of grief? How do we apply this same gentle, non-judgmental awareness to our most difficult emotions? This is the next crucial step in our journey of liberation. Having journeyed through the landscape of the mind, learning to see things as they truly are, learning to walk, speak, and live with intention, we arrive at a clearing. The path so far has been one of understanding, of discipline, of sharpening our focus through the practice of mindfulness and concentration. With a mind that is now more settled, less tossed about by the winds of thought and emotion, we have prepared the soil. Now, we begin the active work of cultivation. We begin to consciously plant the seeds of the most beautiful qualities that lie dormant within the human heart. The first, and perhaps most fundamental of these, is metta, a word from the ancient Pali language that is often translated as loving kindness. But this translation, while lovely, only scratches the surface. Metta is more than just kindness. It is a boundless, unconditional, and radiant goodwill. It is the sincere and heartfelt wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and free from the causes of suffering. In a world that often feels divided, competitive, and cold, the practice of metta is a radical act of warmth. It is the universal antidote to anger, resentment, jealousy, and fear. Before we learn how to cultivate it, we must first understand what metta is not. It is not the possessive, conditional love that we so often see glorified. It is not the love that says, "I will love you if you meet my expectations," or "I love you because you make me feel good." That kind of love, while it can have its own beauty, is entangled with attachment and desire. And as we have learned, anything born of attachment is subject to change and can become a source of pain. Metta is also not a sentimental, saccharine emotion that ignores reality. It does not mean you must agree with everyone's actions or condone harmful behavior. It is not about becoming a passive doormat. Rather, metta is a state of benevolent intention that operates on a deeper level. It is a fundamental warmth of the heart, a recognition of the shared desire for happiness that connects us all. It is a steady, quiet strength, a field of acceptance and well-wishing that you can learn to generate from within, independent of external circumstances or the behavior of others. It is a radiation outwards, not a transaction. It asks for nothing in return. The practice of cultivating metta begins in a place that may seem counterintuitive to some, especially in a culture that often mistakes self-care for selfishness. It begins with oneself. You cannot pour water from an empty vessel. You cannot offer true warmth to others if your own heart is frozen with self-criticism, guilt, or shame. To extend genuine goodwill to the world, you must first be willing to accept it for yourself. For many, this is the most difficult step. We are often our own harshest critics, replaying our mistakes, dwelling on our perceived flaws. The practice of metta towards oneself is a direct healing for this habit. It is the act of looking inward and acknowledging the simple, profound truth that you, just like every other being in the universe, are worthy of happiness. You are worthy of peace. You are worthy of living a life free from suffering. The practice itself is simple in its form, yet profound in its effect. You find a quiet posture, you allow your breath to be natural, and you begin to silently repeat a few phrases, directing them inward. The words are just vehicles. The true aim is to gently awaken the feeling behind them. You might say, silently, "May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease." You repeat these phrases slowly, gently, like a lullaby for the wounded parts of yourself. At first, your mind might rebel. It might bring up a list of all the reasons you don't deserve this. It might feel artificial or foolish. This is normal. The instruction is not to force a feeling of love, but simply to plant the seed of a kind intention. You are just offering the wish. You continue, patiently, watering these seeds with your gentle repetition. You are replacing the well-worn neural pathways of self-judgment with new pathways of self-acceptance and kindness. This is not an act of ego. It is an act of fundamental sanity. Once you have established a small reservoir of warmth for yourself, you expand the circle. The next step is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved friend. This is someone for whom it is easy to feel affection and gratitude, a mentor, a parent, a close friend, even a beloved pet. The purpose here is to allow the feeling of metta to flow effortlessly. You hold an image of this person in your mind, and you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth that arises. Notice how wishing happiness for another doesn't deplete your own. In fact, it often amplifies it. You are learning that love is not a finite resource. Then, the practice takes you a step further, beyond the familiar territory of affection. You bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, a neighbor you only greet with a nod. By directing the phrases of metta towards this person, you begin to break down the mind's habit of categorizing people into important and unimportant. You recognize their humanity, their own quiet wish to be happy, their own silent struggles. You are consciously stretching the muscle of your heart, extending goodwill beyond your immediate tribe. Just as I wish to be happy, may this person also be happy. Now comes the most transformative and often most challenging stage of the practice. You are asked to bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt you, someone with whom you have conflict, someone whose actions you find deplorable. The instruction here is crucial. You are not being asked to condone their harmful actions. You are not being asked to forget the pain they may have caused. You are not being asked to suddenly become their best friend. The practice is for you. It is an act of liberation for your own heart. Holding on to anger and resentment, as the Buddha said, is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So, with as much courage as you can muster, you hold the image of this person in your mind and you offer them the wish of metta. May you be happy. Why? Because you understand on a deep level that truly happy, peaceful, and content people do not cause harm to others. Their harmful actions are born from their own suffering, their own ignorance, their own pain. By wishing for them to be happy, you are wishing for them to be free from the very causes that make them act in harmful ways. This practice is a powerful alchemy that can slowly dissolve the hardened knots of resentment in your own heart, freeing up immense energy that was being wasted on bitterness. It is a profound act of self-love. Finally, having moved through these distinct stages, you let the circle dissolve into boundlessness. You radiate the feeling of metta outwards in all directions, to all the people in your home, in your street, in your city. You extend it to the whole country, to all the countries of the world. You extend it to friends and to enemies, to humans and to animals, to all beings, seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. You let your heart become a sun, radiating warmth without discrimination. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. You rest in this state of universal, unconditional goodwill. The power of this practice is not merely legendary. It is illustrated in the stories of the Buddha's life. There is the famous account of Nalagiri, a ferocious elephant that was deliberately intoxicated and set loose in the Buddha's path by a jealous cousin who wished to kill him. As the massive, enraged animal charged, bellowing and destroying everything in its way, the Buddha's disciples panicked and fled. Only his loyal attendant, Ananda, stood his ground in front of the Buddha to protect him. But the Buddha calmly told Ananda to step aside. He did not run. He did not prepare to fight. He simply stood still, his heart completely open, and radiated a powerful, silent, unwavering field of pure metta directly at the charging elephant. The story says that as the animal entered this field of loving kindness, its rage began to melt away. Its thundering steps slowed to a walk. Its eyes, once filled with fury, became soft. It approached the Buddha, knelt down, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. This story is not about magic. It is a profound illustration of a fundamental truth, that loving kindness is not a weak, passive, or sentimental emotion. It is one of the most powerful transformative forces in the universe, capable of disarming the most fearsome anger and hatred, both within ourselves and in others. By practicing metta meditation regularly, you are not just having a pleasant 5 or 10 minutes. You are rewiring your brain. You are changing your default response to the world. The inner critic becomes quieter. The frustration you feel in a traffic jam might be replaced by the thought, "May all these people get to their destinations safely." The judgment you feel towards a difficult colleague might be softened by the recognition of their own hidden struggles. Your heart literally softens, making you more open, more connected, more resilient. This is not just spiritual belief. Modern neuroscience is beginning to verify these ancient claims, showing that loving kindness meditation can tangibly reduce anxiety, decrease stress hormones, and increase feelings of social connection and overall well-being. It is a training for the heart, just as walking is a training for the body. And this wish for others to be happy, once it is strong and stable, naturally gives rise to its beautiful twin. When our heart is open with metta, and we witness not just the potential for happiness, but the reality of suffering, a new quality arises within us, a powerful, active trembling of the heart that yearns to help. This is the birth of compassion. If metta, or loving kindness, is the gentle sun that wishes for every flower in the garden of existence to bloom, then its inseparable twin is karuna, or compassion. Karuna is the soft rain that falls upon a wilting plant. It is the natural, inevitable response of an open heart when it comes into contact with suffering. It is not a separate practice, so much as a different expression of the same fundamental goodwill we cultivated with metta. When that goodwill encounters happiness, it rejoices. When it encounters pain, it trembles. The ancient texts describe karuna as the trembling or quivering of the heart in the face of suffering. But it is not a passive quiver of fear or horror. It is an active, resonant trembling, one that is coupled with the strong and sincere wish to see that suffering and its causes come to an end. It is the force that moves us from a simple wish for well-being into the realm of engaged empathy and action. It is the heartbeat of wisdom. In our modern language, the word compassion is often used loosely, and it is vital to distinguish it from a near relative that is fundamentally different: pity. Pity, while it may seem virtuous on the surface, often comes from a place of subtle separation and superiority. Pity looks down from above. It observes another's pain and says, "Oh, that poor person, how terrible for them. I am so glad that is not me." Pity creates a barrier, a wall between the observer and the one who suffers. It reinforces the illusion of a separate self who is somehow immune or better off. It can make the person receiving it feel small, reinforcing their sense of victimhood. Karuna, true compassion, does the opposite. It dismantles the wall. It looks across at another being, not down upon them, and it recognizes a shared humanity. It says, "I see your pain. I may not know its exact shape or texture, but I know the feeling of pain itself. This is part of the human condition that we both share." Compassion is born of empathy and respect. It acknowledges the strength in the one who suffers, and it honors their struggle. It closes the distance, fostering a sense of kinship and solidarity. Pity says you. Compassion says us. The cultivation of karuna follows a similar path to the cultivation of metta, but its focus is different. The practice is not about trying to feel sad or to wallow in misery. It is about training the heart to stay open and steady, even when faced with the reality of pain. You begin by bringing to mind someone you know who is currently suffering. It could be a friend struggling with a loss, a family member facing illness, or even yourself. You allow yourself to truly acknowledge the reality of their pain without turning away, without trying to fix it immediately, and without becoming completely overwhelmed by it. This is a delicate balance. The aim is not to drown in their sorrow, but to stand on the firm shore of your own practice and offer them a lifeline of genuine care. You breathe in, acknowledging their suffering. You breathe out, sending them the wish for relief. You can use silent phrases, just as with metta, but tailored to this intention. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May you find peace. May the causes of your suffering cease. You are not pretending to have a magic wand that can take their problems away. You are simply and profoundly activating the immense power of a caring heart. You are strengthening your own capacity to be present with difficulty, a skill that is invaluable both for helping others and for navigating your own life's challenges. As you become more stable in this practice, you expand the circle. You think of the suffering of those you do not know, people you read about in the news, communities facing hardship across the world. You think of the suffering of animals, of the planet itself. You allow your heart to tremble with the vast, shared reality of dukkha, and you continue to breathe out the wish for freedom and peace for all. This boundless, active compassion is perhaps best embodied in the powerful story of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who, out of great compassion, postpones their own final nirvana in order to help all sentient beings achieve liberation. Avalokiteshvara made a vow to listen to the cries of the world and not rest until every last being was free from suffering. As this great being gazed out upon the universe, they saw with perfect clarity the endless ocean of pain, the sickness, the loss, the fear, the anger, the despair. The sheer, overwhelming immensity of it all was too much for even a bodhisattva to bear, and their head exploded into 1,000 pieces. It was a moment of complete shattering in the face of the world's pain. But the story does not end there. The Buddhas, seeing this incredible act of compassionate effort, gathered the shattered pieces and reassembled them, not into one head, but into a form with 11 heads, allowing them to see in all directions at once. They gave this being 1,000 arms, and in the palm of each hand was an eye, symbolizing the union of skillful action and profound wisdom, the ability to see suffering everywhere, and the means to reach out and offer exactly what is needed. This story is a magnificent teaching. It tells us that when we truly open our hearts to the world's suffering, we too will feel a sense of being shattered. It is an authentic and honest response. It is overwhelming, but the path is not to then shut down and retreat into a shell of indifference. The path is to allow ourselves to be reassembled by wisdom, to understand that our compassion does not need to be a fragile, singular thing, but can become a multifaceted, powerful force for good. This leads us to a crucial, practical point: the danger of compassion fatigue. This is a very real phenomenon, experienced by caregivers, therapists, activists, and anyone whose work involves constant exposure to trauma and distress. The heart can only give so much before it feels depleted, leading to burnout, cynicism, and emotional numbness. This is where wisdom must balance compassion. The Buddhist teachings are very clear that karuna, to be sustainable, must be supported by its companions, particularly upekkha, or equanimity, which we will explore later. Sustainable compassion understands that we cannot carry the entire weight of the world on our shoulders. We are not Avalokiteshvara. We must learn to have compassion for ourselves, to recognize our own limits, to replenish our own energy, and to not feel guilty for doing so. Self-compassion is the fuel that allows our compassion for others to continue burning brightly. Furthermore, true karuna must be wise. There is a concept in some schools of thought known as idiot compassion. This refers to compassion that is not guided by wisdom, and therefore ends up causing more harm than good. It is the act of giving a hungry person a fish without teaching them how to fish. It is enabling an addict's destructive behavior because you can't bear to see them in the short-term pain of withdrawal. True, wise compassion is not afraid of tough love. It looks to the long-term well-being of another, and it seeks to address the root causes of suffering, not just to apply a temporary bandage to the symptoms. It has the courage to say no when necessary, and the wisdom to know the difference between helping and enabling. Ultimately, karuna is compassion in action. It is the force that transforms passive goodwill into a tangible, healing presence in the world. It may be as grand as dedicating your life to service, or as simple and immediate as putting down your phone to truly listen to a friend who is hurting. It is the patience you show to an elderly person moving slowly. It is the gentle word you offer to a stressed-out cashier. It is the choice to refrain from adding another angry comment to a heated online discussion. Each act, no matter how small, sends a ripple of healing into the world. It is the ultimate expression of our interconnectedness, the profound recognition that your freedom from suffering is tied to my own. Having opened our hearts with metta, the wish for all to be happy, and having allowed them to tremble with karuna, the wish for all to be free from suffering, we must now address another common human experience. What happens when we witness the happiness, success, and good fortune of others? In a world that so often encourages competition and comparison, this can be a trigger for a very different, more painful emotion. Our journey now leads us to cultivate the direct antidote to envy and jealousy, a quality that allows us to multiply the joy in the world instead of diminishing it. This is the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked through the garden of the heart, learning to cultivate the radiant warmth of loving kindness, metta, and the gentle, healing rain of compassion, karuna. We have opened ourselves to wishing happiness for all and to trembling with the desire to alleviate suffering. Now we arrive at the third of these four divine abodes, a quality that can be, for the modern mind, the most challenging and countercultural of all. This quality is called mudita, which translates as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the ability to feel genuine, wholehearted, and selfless happiness in the face of the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. In a society that is so often driven by competition, comparison, and the quiet fear of being left behind, mudita is a revolutionary act of inner abundance. Let us be honest about the challenge. We scroll through the highlight reels of other people's lives on social media, the engagements, the promotions, the beautiful vacations, and often, the first subtle feeling that arises is not joy, but a pang, a quiet tightening in the chest, a voice that whispers, "Why them? When will it be my turn?" A colleague receives the recognition we hoped for, and a shadow of resentment falls over our heart. A friend achieves a goal we ourselves have been striving for, and our smile feels forced, masking a painful knot of envy. This reaction is deeply human, and it is relentlessly conditioned into us. We are taught to measure our worth by comparing it to others, to see life as a zero-sum game, where another's victory must somehow diminish our own slice of the pie. This state of envy, or its close relative, jealousy, is a profound form of self-inflicted suffering. It is a poison we drink, hoping the other person will be harmed. When we are consumed by envy, we are the ones who are tormented. The other person is likely enjoying their success, completely unaware of our inner turmoil. We, however, are trapped in a narrow, painful prison of our own making. Our world shrinks down to a constant awareness of what we lack. We become blind to the blessings and opportunities in our own lives because our gaze is fixated on the perceived blessings of another. From a Buddhist perspective, envy is the ego in its most defensive and painful state. It is the cry of the illusory separate self that feels threatened, inadequate, and in constant competition with all the other separate selves for a finite supply of happiness and validation. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison. It is the conscious and courageous choice to reverse this ingrained habit. Instead of seeing another's happiness as a threat, we learn to see it as an opportunity to feel joy. When we can genuinely celebrate the success of another, our own capacity for happiness becomes limitless. We are no longer restricted to the handful of joyful moments that happen in our own personal life. Suddenly, the entire world's supply of joy becomes available to us. A friend getting their dream job becomes a source of joy for us. A stranger on the street laughing with their child becomes a source of joy for us. A colleague's breakthrough on a project becomes a source of joy for us. The pie is not finite, it is infinite. Joy is not a resource to be hoarded, but an energy to be shared. And in the sharing, it multiplies. Practicing mudita is a direct assault on the ego's illusion of scarcity. It is the heart's declaration of abundance. Like the other heart practices, the cultivation of mudita is a gradual training. You do not start with your greatest rival. You start where it is easy. Bring to mind a dear friend, someone you love deeply, who has recently experienced some good fortune. Perhaps they've fallen in love, or recovered from an illness, or simply had a wonderful day. Hold them in your mind's eye and truly picture their happiness. See their smile, feel their relief, imagine their delight. And as you do, instead of allowing the mind to slip into its habitual comparison, make the deliberate choice to share in their joy. You can use silent phrases to guide your heart. I am so happy for you. How wonderful that this has happened for you. May your joy and good fortune increase and continue. Feel the genuineness of that wish. Notice the physical sensation that accompanies it. It is often a feeling of lightness, of warmth, of an opening in the chest, the complete opposite of the cold, tight knot of envy. Once you are comfortable with this, you gently stretch the muscle. You bring to mind a neutral person who has experienced some success, perhaps a co-worker you don't know well, or an acquaintance from your community. You make the conscious effort to feel happy for them, to appreciate their success as a human being who, just like you, wishes to be happy. This requires you to actively let go of the ego's narrative and simply connect with the universal reality of joy. The most advanced practice, of course, is to extend mudita towards someone you find difficult, or even someone you consider a rival. To feel genuine joy for their success is a profound act of inner freedom. It does not mean you are weak or have been defeated. It means you are no longer willing to poison yourself with resentment. It means you are choosing peace over the painful agitation of rivalry. It is the ultimate testament to an abundant heart. Let us imagine a modern story. Picture two friends, Maya and Chloe, who have been passionate amateur bakers for years. They both dream of leaving their corporate jobs to open their own artisanal bakeries. They spend weekends testing recipes together, sketching out business plans, and propping each other up when doubt creeps in. Then, Maya gets a lucky break. She finds the perfect location at an affordable rent, and her bakery opens to immediate acclaim. A local food blogger writes a glowing review, and soon she has lines out the door. She has achieved the dream. Now, Chloe is at a critical juncture. The camera of her mind can follow two paths. The first is the well-trodden path of envy. She sees Maya's success, and a bitter voice whispers, "That should have been me. She just got lucky." She starts avoiding Maya's calls. When they do talk, her congratulations are hollow. She obsesses over Maya's social media, comparing her own slow progress to Maya's seemingly effortless success. This path leads Chloe into a state of isolation, bitterness, and creative paralysis. Her own dream stalls because all her energy is consumed by resentment. But there is another path, the path of mudita. On this path, when Chloe hears of Maya's success, she takes a deep breath and makes a conscious choice. She calls Maya, and her voice is filled with genuine, unreserved excitement. "Maya, this is incredible. I am so happy for you." She goes to the bakery, not as a critic, but as a supporter, buying pastries and telling everyone she knows how wonderful it is. She celebrates her friend's victory as if it were her own. And because she has chosen connection over comparison, something amazing happens. Her world gets bigger. She looks at Maya's success not as a threat, but as a blueprint, an inspiration. She asks for advice. She learns from Maya's experience. Her friend's success doesn't extinguish her own dream. It fans the flames. By choosing to participate in her friend's joy, she fills her own heart with positive energy, which fuels her own journey forward. This is mudita in action. It is a choice we can make every single day. It is in the moment we read a happy announcement online and choose to offer a sincere congratulations, instead of scrolling past with a pang of lack. It is in the way we listen when a loved one shares good news, being fully present to their joy, instead of immediately turning the conversation back to ourselves. It is the practice of actively looking for the good in others, of appreciating their talents, their kindness, their efforts, and celebrating them without reservation. We have now explored 3 of the 4 great dwellings of the heart: the wish for all to be happy, metta; the wish for all to be free from suffering, karuna; and the joy in another's joy, mudita. These are the active, reaching qualities of a boundless heart, but they must be protected. What happens when our wish to help is met with a situation we cannot change? What happens when our joy is confronted with the immense, immovable sorrows of the world? To prevent our hearts from breaking or burning out, these 3 qualities must be held in the steady, spacious container of the 4th and final abode. This is the profound quality of upekkha, or equanimity, the unshakable balance of a wise and liberated mind. We have explored the radiant, outward-reaching qualities of the heart, the unconditional wish for happiness that is metta, the trembling desire to alleviate suffering that is karuna, and the selfless celebration of another's joy that is mudita. These 3 energies, when cultivated, can transform our inner world and our relationships. But like 3 powerful, beautiful horses, they need a skilled and steady driver to hold the reins. Without this guiding intelligence, our loving kindness can curdle into grief-stricken attachment when we lose what we love. Our compassion can lead us down a path of exhaustion and despair, a condition we now call burnout. Our sympathetic joy can become dependent on the fleeting good fortune of others, rising and falling with their circumstances. The fourth and final of these divine abodes, upekkha, or equanimity, is this masterful driver. It is the quality that holds the other three in a perfect, unshakable balance. It is the crowning jewel of the four, the deep, silent, and still water that lies undisturbed beneath the most turbulent waves on the surface. It is absolutely crucial to understand what equanimity is not, because it is perhaps the most misunderstood of all Buddhist concepts. To the Western ear, the word can sound like indifference, apathy, or a cold, stony detachment. This could not be further from the truth. Indifference is a state of withdrawal, a closing of the heart. It is born from fear, aversion, or ignorance, and it says, "I don't care." Apathy is a sign of defeat. Equanimity, upekkha, is the opposite. It is the fruit of profound wisdom and the ultimate expression of a courageous and radically open heart. It does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care so deeply, and because I care so deeply, I will remain balanced so that I can be of true service and not be swept away by the storm." Indifference is a wall we build to protect a fragile self. Equanimity is the vast open space in which the entire drama of life can unfold, without the need for walls. It is the calm, steady hand of a surgeon who cares immensely for her patient, and whose care is expressed through a focused, stable, and unwavering attention. So where does this profound stability come from? It is not achieved by gritting our teeth and suppressing our emotions. It arises naturally from the deep, experiential, and embodied understanding of the truths we have been exploring all along this path. The first is impermanence, anicca, when you know, not just intellectually, but in your bones, that everything is in a constant state of flux. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation, every state of health, every relationship, every worldly condition. You naturally stop clinging so tightly to the pleasant and resisting so fiercely the unpleasant. You see them for what they are, temporary weather patterns passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You don't try to hold on to the sunshine or rage against the rain, because you know neither will last forever. This knowing fosters a deep, internal relaxation. The second source of equanimity is a wise understanding of karma, the law of cause and effect. It is the recognition that all beings are the owners of their actions and the heirs of the results of their actions. While we can love, guide, and offer our help, we cannot walk another person's path for them. We cannot make their choices, nor can we ultimately shield them from the consequences of those choices. Trying to control the outcomes of everyone's life is an impossible, exhausting task that is doomed to failure. Equanimity releases us from this godlike burden. It allows us to offer our compassion and support freely without being attached to the outcome, understanding that our role is to be a skillful helper, not an all-powerful controller. There is a timeless Taoist and Zen story that perfectly illustrates this spacious, wise perspective. An old farmer lived in a small village. He had one prized horse. One day, the horse broke through its fence and ran away. The farmer's neighbors all came to offer their condolences. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said, shaking their heads. The old farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, and it was not alone. It had led a herd of 10 wild, magnificent horses back to the farm. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate. "What incredible good luck," they exclaimed. The farmer, calmly observing the new horses, replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's only son was attempting to train one of the wild horses when he was thrown to the ground, and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors rushed over, full of pity. "How awful," they lamented. "Such bad luck." The farmer looked at his son's leg and replied, "Maybe." A few weeks passed, and the emperor's army marched into the village. They were conscripting every able-bodied young man for a brutal war from which few were expected to return. They saw the farmer's son with his broken leg and passed him by. The neighbors, overjoyed for him, said, "You were right. It was good luck after all." The farmer simply said, "Maybe." This story is the essence of upekkha. Our small minds are quick to label every event as good or bad, a success or a failure. But we are seeing only one tiny frame in a vast, interconnected, and incomprehensible film. Equanimity is the wisdom of maybe. It is the spaciousness to allow life to unfold without needing to immediately judge it or react to it. It is resting in the vast, peaceful ground of not knowing. This stabilizing wisdom is what allows the other three immeasurable states to function effectively. With metta, our loving kindness, equanimity prevents it from becoming selfish attachment. We can love fully and freely, but we don't collapse when the object of our love changes or leaves us, because we understand impermanence. With karuna, our compassion, equanimity is the antidote to burnout. It allows us to be present with the world's immense suffering without being drowned by it, preserving our energy so we can continue to help. With mudita, our sympathetic joy, equanimity keeps us from becoming dependent on another's good fortune. We can celebrate their happiness without it becoming a frantic high, and we can remain stable when their good luck inevitably changes. In our daily lives, we are constantly being pushed and pulled by what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds. These are 4 pairs of opposites that blow through every human life: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and status and disgrace. Our entire unawakened life is a frantic dance of trying to secure the first of each pair and desperately avoid the second. This constant striving and resisting is the very source of our unease and agitation. The practice of equanimity is to become like a great mountain. The winds still blow, sometimes warm and pleasant, sometimes bitingly cold, but the mountain itself remains unmoved. The practice is to notice these winds as they blow through your day: the pleasure of a delicious meal, the pain of a headache, the gain of a small financial windfall, the loss of your car keys, the praise of your boss, the blame of a loved one. You observe them, you feel them, but you learn not to be knocked over by them. You cultivate a center of gravity so deep and stable that you can experience the fullness of life without being its victim. The formal practice for cultivating equanimity is, in fact, the very practice of mindfulness we began with. Every time you sit in meditation and observe a pleasant sensation arise without clinging to it, you are training in equanimity. Every time you feel an ache in your knee and simply observe it with curious attention, instead of resisting it, you are training in equanimity. Every time you watch a thought of anger or sadness arise and pass without getting caught in its story, you are training in equanimity. It is the patient, moment-to-moment recognition that all experience is like the weather. It comes and it goes. The sky, your awareness, remains. With these 4 great tools: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the balancing wisdom of equanimity, we have prepared our heart and mind. We have created an inner psychological toolkit of immense resilience, warmth, and wisdom. We are now ready to turn our attention to some of the most powerful and challenging emotional storms that arise within us. With this stable foundation, we can now learn to work directly with the raw, fiery, and often destructive energy of anger. Having established our hearts in the boundless states of love, compassion, joy, and the profound balance of equanimity, we are now equipped. We have built a firm and spacious container, a sanctuary within ourselves. From this place of strength, we can now turn to face some of the most powerful and challenging energies that sweep through the human mind. We begin with the most volatile, the most seductive, the most fiery of all, the energy of anger. Anger is a powerful force. In its initial flare, it can feel intoxicating, lending us a false sense of strength, a surge of adrenaline, and the illusion of absolute moral clarity. It arrives like a bolt of lightning, promising to burn away all that is unjust or wrong. But if we are not careful, if we do not handle this fire with immense wisdom and skill, the first thing it will burn to the ground is the very house in which it was born, our own peace of mind, our own body, and our own heart. The Buddhist path offers a middle way in working with Anjera path that is neither one of reckless, harmful expression, nor one of unhealthy, corrosive suppression. It is a path of transformation. To transform anger, we must first become intimate with its nature. We must look deeply into the heart of the fire. The first thing we often discover is that anger is a secondary emotion. It is a loud, aggressive bodyguard, hired to protect something much softer, much more vulnerable, and much more painful underneath. When you feel the heat of anger rising, the first practice of wisdom is to pause and ask, what lies beneath this? If you look with honest curiosity, you may find that beneath the anger is a deep sense of hurt. You feel disrespected, unappreciated, or betrayed. Perhaps, beneath the anger, you find fear. You feel threatened, unsafe, or that your world is spinning out of control. Or maybe you find a profound sense of powerlessness, and anger rushes in to create an illusion of control. Anger feels strong, while hurt and fear feel weak. So the mind, in its desire to protect itself, latches onto the powerful feeling emotion and allows it to become the entire story. We must remember the lesson of the two arrows. The first arrow is the event itself, the insulting word, the careless action, the frustrating obstacle. This first arrow causes pain, but the second arrow is our reaction to it, our anger, our resentment, our internal narrative of blame and fury. It is this second arrow, which we shoot into ourselves, that causes the vast majority of our suffering. Understanding this is crucial, but it is a long-term practice. What do we do in the heat of the moment, when the fire is raging? The teachings provide us with immediate, practical first aid. The first, and most important, step is to recognize the flare of anger and immediately invoke the power of the pause. Stop before you speak the word that you cannot take back, before you send the email that will escalate the conflict, before you slam the door. Just stop. Do absolutely nothing, and then bring all of your attention to one simple, reliable reality, the physical sensation of your breath. You don't need to change it or fix it. Just feel it. Breathing in, you can say to yourself, I know that anger is here. This is an act of recognition, not judgment. Breathing out, you can say, I am taking care of my anger. You are not trying to kill it or banish it. You are simply holding it with a kind, mindful awareness, creating a vital space between the stimulus and your habitual, destructive reaction. The next step is to move your awareness from the story in your head, the looping thoughts of he said, she said, and how dare they, and bring it directly into your body. Where does this anger live? Right now, as a physical sensation. Is it a tight, burning knot in your stomach? Is it a clenching in your jaw, a tension in your shoulders? Is it a pounding, racing feeling in your chest? Approach these sensations not as anger, but simply as pure energy, as raw physical data. Be a curious scientist of your inner experience. Is the sensation hot or cold? Is it vibrating or solid? As you observe it without judgment, you stop feeding it with your thoughts. You are no longer lost in the drama of the story. You are simply present with a temporary pattern of energy in your body. In doing this, you rob the anger of its fuel, and often you will find that the raw sensation begins to change, to soften, to dissipate on its own. If the situation allows, a change of scenery can also be a powerful tool. Simply walking into another room, stepping outside for a breath of fresh air, or splashing cool water on your face can physically interrupt the mental feedback loop that keeps anger churning. These are the emergency measures, but the long-term path involves fundamentally changing our relationship with the causes of anger. Here, we must confront one of the most persistent illusions of the mind, the belief that by holding on to anger, we are somehow punishing the person who wronged us. The Buddha offered a powerful and vivid simile for this. He said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first." Imagine this clearly. You are holding a searing, red-hot piece of charcoal in your bare hand. Your palm is blistering. Your nerves are screaming in agony. Your intention is to hurl it at your enemy. But while you are waiting for the right moment, while you are replaying the offense in your mind, who is being burned? Only you. The other person may be miles away, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of your turmoil. But your own body is being flooded with stress hormones. Your blood pressure is rising. Your heart is being strained. Your mind is robbed of all peace and clarity. Letting go of anger is therefore not a gift to the other person. It is not about condoning their behavior. It is an act of profound compassion for yourself. It is the choice to put down the hot coal. How do we do this? How do we let go when the grievance feels so justified? This is where we bring in the great antidotes of metta and karuna. It may seem like the most difficult, even impossible thing to do, but the practice is to consciously direct thoughts of loving kindness towards the person who is the object of your anger. In the quiet of your own mind, you repeat, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way." Again, this is not about saying their action was okay. It is a strategic, powerful method for cleansing your own heart of poison. It is a recognition that, as we have learned, happy and peaceful people do not cause harm. Their harmful actions are a sign of their own inner suffering. By wishing for their happiness, you are wishing for an end to the very causes of their harmful behavior. This is an act of supreme emotional strength, not weakness. We can also apply the lens of wisdom, specifically the understanding of dependent origination. Instead of obsessing over what the person did, we can practice looking for the causes and conditions that might have led to their action. We will never know for sure, but we can contemplate with compassion. Perhaps they were treated harshly by their own parents and are simply repeating a learned pattern of behavior. Perhaps they are under immense, unseen pressure at work or at home. Perhaps they are suffering from physical pain or deep insecurity or ignorance. This contemplation does not excuse their action, but it begins to depersonalize it. It is no longer a malicious, calculated attack on me. It becomes the unfortunate result of a long and complex chain of causes and conditions. When we see the person not as a monster, but as a fellow suffering being caught in their own web of conditioning, our righteous anger naturally softens into a more spacious understanding, and sometimes even into compassion. Finally, we can learn to see the energy of anger itself in a new light. The raw energy behind anger is neutral. It is simply a powerful force. When we identify with it and get lost in its story, it becomes destructive. But when we can meet it with mindfulness, when we can separate the raw energy from the narrative, we can learn to harness it. The energy that rises as anger in the face of injustice can be consciously transformed. Instead of becoming the destructive fire of rage, it can be channeled by wisdom and compassion into the focused, determined, and sustainable energy of compassionate action. We move from a desire to punish and destroy to a powerful resolve to protect and transform. Anger, then, does not have to be our enemy. It can be our teacher. It teaches us where we are still hooked, where our hearts are still closed, where our understanding is still limited. By learning to meet it with the cooling water of mindfulness, self-compassion, and wisdom, we learn to put down the hot coal and free ourselves. Anger is a fire primarily rooted in the past, in grievances we refuse to let go of. There is another great affliction of the mind, however, which is rooted not in what has happened, but in what might happen. It is the cold, contracting, and paralyzing energy of fear, and its chronic, pervasive cousin, anxiety. Our journey now leads us into this shadowy domain to learn how to meet this great challenge with clarity and a fearless heart. If anger is the hot, explosive fire that burns from the grievances of the past, then its counterpart is the cold, contracting shadow that is cast by the imagined future. This is the energy of fear and its chronic, low-grade, and deeply pervasive companion, anxiety. For so many of us in the modern world, anxiety is the background noise of our lives. It is a constant, quiet hum of dread, a persistent feeling of being unsafe, even when all evidence points to the contrary. It is the mind endlessly spinning what-if scenarios, rehearsing tragedies that have not happened, and preparing for catastrophes that will likely never arrive. It is a state of inner contraction, of paralysis, a force that shrinks our world and robs us of the simple joy of being present. It is vital to understand that this is not a personal failing or a sign of weakness. It is a deep-seated survival mechanism, an ancient biological programming that has gone haywire. The part of our brain designed to scan the savannah for predators is now scanning our emails, our news feeds, and our social interactions for threats, keeping us in a perpetual state of high alert. To work with fear and anxiety, we must first dissect it. We must understand its anatomy. At its core, the vast majority of our psychological fear is a story that our mind tells itself about the future. Think about it carefully. In this very moment, as you are listening to these words, are you in immediate danger? Is the imagined catastrophe happening right now? For most of us, most of the time, the answer is no. We are not afraid of what is actually happening in the present moment. We are terrified of what we imagine might happen in 5 minutes, next week, or 10 years from now. We fear the potential illness, the possible job loss, the imagined rejection, the lonely future. The tragedy is that our nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real threat and a vividly imagined one. When the mind gets lost in these fictional future horror stories, the body reacts as if they are real. It pumps out stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Our heart rate increases, our breathing becomes shallow, and we enter the physiological state of fight, flight, or freeze, all while simply sitting in a perfectly safe room. The fundamental problem is that our awareness has abandoned the reality of the present and is held captive in a terrifying, non-existent future. The primary antidote, then, is simple in its instruction, though it requires consistent practice. It is the act of returning home to the present moment. When you feel that familiar wave of anxiety begin to rise, The first instruction is to gently but firmly interrupt the looping thoughts and anchor your awareness in the undeniable reality of your senses. You can try a simple grounding exercise. Right now, wherever you are, silently name 5 separate things that you can see. Notice their color, their shape, their texture. Then, name 4 things you can feel through your sense of touch. The sensation of your feet on the floor, the texture of the clothes against your skin, the solidness of the chair supporting you, the coolness of the air. Then, listen for 3 distinct sounds. Then, notice 2 different smells. And finally, bring your attention to 1 thing you can taste, even if it's just the neutral taste of your own mouth. This practice acts like a powerful emergency brake for the runaway train of anxious thought. It yanks your mind out of the hypothetical future and plants it firmly in the soil of the here and now. Once grounded, we can learn to work more directly with the feeling itself. Just as with anger, our tendency is to resist the unpleasant sensation of fear. We try to distract ourselves, to numb it, or to push it away. The practice of mindfulness invites us to do the opposite, to turn towards the sensation with a gentle curiosity, as if to befriend it. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," which creates a solid identity, you can note, "There is a feeling of anxiety here." Then, you can investigate it in the body. Where does it live? Is it a fluttering, a vibration in the chest? Is it a cold, hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach? A weakness in the knees, or a tightness in the throat? Drop the mental label of fear and just explore the raw, physical data. By observing the pure sensation without adding the second arrow of a fearful story, you begin to see it for what it is, a temporary, impersonal flow of energy passing through your body. You discover a profound truth. You are bigger than the feeling. You can contain it. The sensation itself is not the problem. Your fearful resistance to the sensation is where the true suffering lies. There is an old story of a deer that lived its entire life in a state of chronic fear. Every waking moment was spent in terror, its head darting from side to side, its heart pounding at every snapped twig or rustle in the leaves. It was constantly running from the idea of the lion that it knew was hunting it. It grew thin and exhausted, not from being chased, but from the relentless strain of imagining being chased. One day, it was so utterly spent that it simply could not run another step. It stopped by a watering hole, its legs trembling, and it turned to face the direction of its fear. In that moment, the lion emerged from the trees, and in that moment of direct, unmediated confrontation, something miraculous happened. The vague, all-consuming, chronic terror that had plagued its entire life vanished and was replaced by a sharp, clear, and intensely alive reality. By finally stopping and facing the object of its fear, the deer found a strange and powerful stillness. The story teaches us that our greatest suffering comes not from the dangers of life themselves, but from the terrifying stories we tell ourselves about them. The greatest strength is found not in running, but in turning to face what is actually here. Beyond these immediate practices, the path offers profound wisdom that can deconstruct the very foundation of fear. Much of our anxiety comes from a desperate attempt to create permanence and control in a world that is, by its very nature, impermanent and uncontrollable. We are afraid of losing our health, our youth, our wealth, our loved ones. We are afraid of change. By contemplating anicca, impermanence, we begin to relax our white-knuckled grip on life. We begin to accept that everything changes, everything arises and passes away. This acceptance does not make loss painless, but it drastically reduces the chronic, anxious resistance to the fundamental nature of reality. We learn to hold our lives, our relationships, and our possessions more lightly. Even more profoundly, we can contemplate anatta, not self. What is this precious I that we are so terrified of protecting? We fear failure. We fear embarrassment. We fear public speaking. We fear not being seen as smart or successful. All of these fears are threats to a constructed identity, a fragile ego that we have built and now feel we must defend at all costs. But when we look for this solid, separate self, what do we find? We find a changing body, a flow of feelings, a stream of thoughts, a series of perceptions. We find a process, not a thing. If there is no fixed, permanent self to be humiliated or to fail, who, exactly, is being threatened? This insight strikes at the very root of psychological fear, loosening its grip in a radical way. This does not mean that all fear is useless. Sometimes fear is a wise messenger. The fear of an upcoming exam is a signal to study. The fear of illness is a signal to take better care of our bodies. The fear of hurting a relationship is a signal to act with more kindness. Wise fear motivates skillful action in the present moment. The problem arises when we get lost in neurotic worry about future outcomes, which are always beyond our control. The practice is to hear the message, take the wise action that is possible right now, and then let go of the result. We have now journeyed through the challenging inner landscapes of anger and fear, learning to meet these powerful energies with mindfulness, kindness, and wisdom. We have developed a set of tools to cultivate a sense of peace and resilience within ourselves. Yet, we do not live as isolated islands. We exist within a vast, complex, and often challenging web of relationships. The greatest spiritual practice, the most difficult yoga, is often found not on a cushion in a quiet room, but in our day-to-day interactions with our partners, our families, our friends, and our colleagues. Our journey now moves from the internal to the interpersonal, to explore how to carry this wisdom out into the world and into the hearts of others. Having journeyed deep into the inner landscapes of the mind, learning to work with the powerful energies of anger and fear, we now bring our practice out of the quiet solitude of our own consciousness and into the most dynamic, challenging, and fertile ground for growth we will ever encounter: our relationships with other people. While solitary meditation is essential for building a foundation of mindfulness and stability, it is in our interactions with partners, family, friends, and colleagues that the sincerity and strength of our practice are truly tested. Relationships are the crucible. They are the mirror that reflects back to us, with unflinching honesty, all of our attachments, our insecurities, our judgments, and our deepest seated patterns. The Buddhist path does not see this challenge as a problem to be avoided, but as the most profound opportunity imaginable. Every interaction, especially the difficult ones, is a chance to awaken. The first and most fundamental shift is to change the very lens through which we view others. We must learn to see them with the eyes of wisdom and compassion. The starting point for this is to remember the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, of dukkha, the person standing in front of you, the partner who seems distant, the parent who is critical, the child who is defiant, the co-worker who is frustrating, is a suffering being. Just like you, they have their own invisible burdens, their own hidden fears, their own history of hurts and disappointments that shape their every word and action. Their annoying habits are often unconscious strategies to protect a vulnerable part of themselves. Their hurtful words are often arrows shot from a place of their own pain. When we can remember this, when we can see the suffering behind the difficult behavior, our entire orientation shifts. It becomes much harder to hold on to anger when we see that the person who caused it is themselves caught in the throes of their own private suffering. Our reaction can begin to move from judgment and defensiveness to something closer to karuna, to compassion. We can deepen this by applying the wisdom of dependent origination. The person we are in conflict with is not a solid, independent, villainous entity who woke up in the morning with the sole intention of making our life difficult. They are, like us, the result of a vast and complex web of causes and conditions. They are the product of their genetics, their upbringing, their culture, their education, the quality of their sleep last night, and what they ate for breakfast. Their actions and words are the result of this intricate conditioning. Seeing this does not mean we excuse harmful behavior, but it does depersonalize it. We can begin to see their actions not as a personal assault on me, but as the impersonal unfolding of causes and effects. This view creates a spaciousness in our mind. It frees us from the tight, painful grip of taking everything so personally and allows us to respond to situations with far greater clarity and wisdom. From this ground of wise perception, we can engage in the practical arts of mindful communication. The first of these is the practice of deep listening. This is far more than simply remaining silent while waiting for our turn to speak. Deep listening is a profound act of compassion, an offering of your full, unwavering, and non-judgmental presence to another. It is listening with only one purpose: to understand, not to rebut, not to advise, not to fix, not to share your own competing story, but simply to receive the other person, to give them the rare and precious gift of feeling truly heard. When you listen in this way, you create a space of safety and trust where true connection can happen. The partner to deep listening is loving speech, which is the practice of samavaka, or right speech, in action. It is the conscious choice to use our words to reduce suffering and create connection, rather than to cause harm. This requires mindfulness. It requires us to invoke the power of the pausetto, take a breath before speaking, to check our intention. Are we speaking in order to be right, to win an argument, to wound the other person? Or are we speaking in order to be understood, to foster harmony, and to express ourselves with kindness and clarity? It means learning to speak our truth, but with care. It means using I statements that express our own feelings. I feel hurt when this happens, instead of accusatory you statements that put the other person on the defensive. You always do this. Loving speech and deep listening are the twin pillars of conscious relationships. Yet, even with the best communication skills, we will still find ourselves suffering in our relationships until we address the deepest root of that suffering, our expectations. Most of the disappointment, resentment, and pain we experience in our interactions with others stems from one single, flawed premise: the belief that it is someone else's job to make us happy. We enter relationships, consciously or unconsciously, with a long list of demands. We expect our partner to make us feel secure, loved, and whole. We expect our friends to always be available and understanding. We expect our family to approve of our choices. We are placing the responsibility for our own inner well-being in the hands of other imperfect, suffering human beings. This is an impossible burden for them to carry, and it sets us up for a lifetime of inevitable disappointment. The great liberation in relationships comes when we finally, fully, take 100% responsibility for our own happiness. It is an inside job. When we learn to generate our own metta, to soothe our own fears, to take care of our own heart, we cease to be beggars in our relationships. We no longer approach others from a place of lack, needing them to fill our inner void. Instead, We can approach them from a place of fullness, able to give and receive love freely, without the desperate clinging of need. We can simply appreciate them for who they are, not for what they can do for us. There is a classic Zen story that brilliantly illustrates this principle of non-clinging within relationships. Two monks, a senior monk and a junior monk, were on a long pilgrimage. Their path led them to a river that was swollen and turbulent from recent rains. A beautiful young woman stood at the river's edge, dressed in fine silks, clearly distressed and afraid to cross. Seeing her plight, the senior monk, without hesitation, walked over, hoisted her onto his shoulders, waded through the strong current, and gently set her down on the opposite bank. She thanked him profusely, and he simply nodded and continued on his way. The junior monk was speechless, his mind reeling in shock and judgment. Their monastic vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. He walked behind his senior in fuming silence for hours, the scene replaying over and over in his mind. Finally, miles down the road, he could contain his indignation no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? We are sworn to vows of celibacy. You broke our most sacred rule by touching that woman." The senior monk looked at his agitated junior with a calm, compassionate gaze. "Brother," he said gently, "I left that woman by the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a profound teaching on the nature of our suffering. The senior monk performed an act of simple, selfless compassion that was over in a moment. He did not cling to it. The junior monk, however, clung not to the act, but to his own mental proliferation about ithis judgment, his righteousness, his resentment. He was the one who was truly burdened. How often do we do this in our own relationships? Someone says or does something, and the event itself is over in an instant, but we carry it. We carry the memory, the judgment, the grievance, the story of how we were wronged, around in our heads for hours, days, weeks, even years. We are the ones still carrying the person by the riverbank long after the event is over. Wisdom in relationships is learning to let go. It is learning to address things in the moment and then to allow the moment to pass. Every person in our life becomes our teacher. The person who triggers our anger is our teacher of patience. The person who makes us feel insecure is our teacher of self-compassion. The person we find it hardest to forgive is our greatest teacher of letting go. When we can see our relationships not as a source of problems, but as a custom-designed curriculum for our own awakening, everything changes. We have now traveled from the depths of our own mind to the complex field of our relationships. We have learned to work with our inner world and our outer world. This brings us to a final, essential question. What is the purpose of all this effort? Where does this path ultimately lead? We may be tempted to imagine some far-off, blissful destination, some permanent state of perfect peace. But the ultimate wisdom of this path reveals something far more subtle and profound. It reveals that the path is not a means to an end. The path is the end itself. We have come to the end of our long and deep exploration. We have faced the reality of our own suffering. We have investigated its hidden causes within our own minds. We have walked the practical and Noble Eightfold Path. We have cultivated the boundless qualities of the heart, and we have learned to work skillfully with the great inner storms of anger and fear. After such a journey, a natural and very human question arises. What is the point of it all? Where is the final destination? What is this state called nirvana, the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path? Our Western, goal-oriented minds tend to imagine it as some kind of blissful paradise, a permanent state of euphoric bliss, a heavenly realm where all our problems magically dissolve forever. We imagine it as a finish line we cross, after which we receive a trophy and the race is over. The wisdom of the path, however, reveals something far more subtle, far more profound, and ultimately, far more useful. The word nirvana, or nibbana, in the original Pali language, literally means to extinguish, or to blow out, like snuffing out a candle flame. The question then is not where do you go, but what is extinguished? The answer is simple and direct. What is extinguished are the three fires that cause all of our suffering. The fire of greed, craving, and obsessive desire. The fire of hatred, aversion, and ill will. And the fire of delusion, ignorance, and fundamental misunderstanding of reality. Nirvana is not a place you travel to. It is the natural state of the mind that is uncovered when these fires cease to burn. It is the peace, clarity, and radiant freedom that is already present, right here, underneath all the smoke and flames of our agitated minds. It is not an escape from reality. It is the experience of reality as it truly is for the very first time. This leads to a radical re-envisioning of what it means to be at peace. Peace, or enlightenment, does not mean the absence of problems. It does not mean you will never get sick again. It does not mean you will never experience the pain of loss. It does not mean your car will never break down, or that difficult people will suddenly vanish from your life. The great 8 worldly winds, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, status and disgrace, continue to blow throughout everyone's life, including the life of an awakened person. The profound difference is not in the outer circumstances, but in the inner response. A mind that has not been trained is like a small, flimsy kite, tossed about violently by every gust of wind. But a mind that has been trained in wisdom and compassion is like a great, ancient mountain. The winds still howl around it. The storms still rage upon its slopes. But the mountain itself remains stable, grounded, and unshakable. Peace is not the absence of the storm. It is the discovery of a vast, silent, and immovable center right in the heart of the storm. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this truth. A young, earnest student, full of ideas about spiritual attainment, approached his Zen master. "Master," he asked eagerly, "what was your life like before you became enlightened?" The master thought for a moment and replied, "Chop wood, carry water." The student was a little disappointed. He had expected to hear tales of incredible visions or profound austerities. Puzzled, he asked his second question. "Well, what is your life like now, after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiled gently and gave his reply, "Chop wood, carry water, end of pry." The meaning of this story is the very heart of a lived spiritual practice. The outer activities of life do not necessarily change. The laundry still needs to be folded. The bills still need to be paid. The floors still need to be swept. The emails still need to be answered. The revolutionary transformation is entirely internal. Before enlightenment, one chops wood with a mind full of resentment, complaining about the work, dreaming of being somewhere else. One carries water while the mind is lost in anxious thoughts about the future and regretful stories about the past. The body is here, but the mind is everywhere else. After enlightenment, one simply chops wood. The mind is fully present with the scent of the pine, the weight of the axe, the sharp sound of the blade splitting the log. One simply carries water. The mind is fully present with the feeling of the wooden bucket handle, the cool sloshing of the water, the sensation of the earth beneath one's feet. The sacred is not found in leaving the world, but in learning to be fully present, for the ordinary, mundane tasks that make up our life. The goal is to bring a quality of sacred attention to our profane reality. This reveals the ultimate secret of the path. The path is the goal. The journey itself is the destination. Every single step we take with mindfulness is a moment of arrival. We tend to think of nirvana as some far-off destination at the end of a long and arduous road. But this is a mistake that creates more striving and more dissatisfaction. The truth is that moments of nirvana, small and large, are available to us at any time. When you are lost in a storm of angry thoughts and you suddenly remember to come back to the feeling of your breath, that single moment of mindful recognition, that is a moment of nirvana. It is a moment of freedom, a brief extinguishing of the fire of hatred. When you are about to say a harsh, critical word to a loved one, and you pause, take a breath, and choose a kinder word instead. That moment of compassion is a moment of nirvana. It is a moment of freedom from the conditioning of ill will. When you are walking outside and you truly see the intricate beauty of a single leaf, and for a moment, your mind is completely free from wanting, planning, or worrying. That moment of simple, pure presence is a moment of nirvana. The spiritual life, then, is not a frantic sprint towards a finish line. It is the gentle, patient, and continuous art of stringing together these precious moments of presence one after another. It is a lifelong journey, and because it is a lifelong journey, perhaps the most essential qualities we must cultivate are patience and kindness toward ourselves. There will be days of great clarity. There will be days we feel stuck in the mud. There will be times we act with wisdom and compassion, and times we fall back into old, painful, unconscious habits. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply part of the path. The instruction is to treat ourselves with the same metta and karuna we are trying to extend to others. When you fall, you don't berate yourself for being a bad meditator or a failed spiritual seeker. You acknowledge what happened without judgment. You offer yourself a moment of kindness for the struggle, and then you gently begin again. The most important practice on the spiritual path is simply to begin again and again and again with a soft heart and a forgiving mind. We have come to the end of our exploration of the path. We started by looking squarely at our suffering. We found its roots in our own clinging and misunderstanding. We walked the eightfold path of practice. We learned to open our hearts and to face our fears. And we have arrived at the liberating realization that our destination is not in some distant future, but is available right here in the quality of attention and kindness we can bring to this very moment. This is the great work of a human life, and the great reward is in the doing of it. We began this journey together in a place familiar to so many of us, a place of feeling overwhelmed, adrift in the relentless noise and pressure of the modern world. We started by looking squarely at the nature of our own dissatisfaction, our dukkha, not as a personal failure or an enemy to be defeated, but as a profound teacher and a universal truth of the human condition. From there, we embarked on a path of discovery, tracing the roots of this suffering not to the world outside, but to the intricate, often unconscious habits of our own mind sour, relentless craving for things to be different, our fierce resistance to what is, and our fundamental misunderstanding of our own impermanent, interdependent nature. But we did not linger in the diagnosis. We found that there is an ancient, noble, and practical path leading out of this suffering. We walked the steps of this eightfold path, learning to cultivate wisdom, to live ethically, and to train the mind in stillness and clarity. We learned to actively water the seeds of love, compassion, and joy in our hearts, and to find the unshakable balance of equanimity that can hold it all. If there is a single, essential message to take away from our time together, it is this: peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an exotic prize, awarded only to a select few after a lifetime of effort. It is not something you can acquire, purchase, or achieve. Peace is your natural state. It is the vast, silent, clear blue sky of awareness that is always, already here, completely untouched by the passing clouds of thought, emotion, and circumstance. The entire spiritual path, in its essence, is not a journey of becoming something you are not. It is a journey of returning. It is a process of gently, patiently, and compassionately unlearning all the habits of mind that obscure the profound peace that is your birthright. The work is not to build a new house, but to simply clean the windows of the beautiful house you already live in, so the light can finally shine through. And so, we leave you here, at the true beginning of your journey. You do not need to go anywhere else, or acquire anything new. You already possess everything you need to walk this path. Your own breath, this simple, humble, rhythmic rising and falling, is your most faithful anchor, always available to bring you home to the present moment, out of the storms of the past and future. Your own heart, right now, has a boundless capacity for kindness, an innate ability to connect with the suffering and the joy of others, and most importantly, to offer that same gentle compassion to yourself. And your own mind, which may often feel like a merciless tyrant, has the potential to become your wisest teacher and your dearest friend. The path forward is not one of grand, heroic leaps, but of small, simple, and repeated steps. It begins with your very next breath. It unfolds in the choice to meet a moment of frustration with a flicker of patience. It is found in the willingness to let go of one small resentment, to offer one quiet word of kindness, to simply be present for the feeling of water on your hands as you wash the dishes. The search for peace is not a journey to a distant shore. It is the simple, courageous, and ongoing act of turning homeward.